Hello. Hey guys, welcome
What's up,
back.
everyone?
Hey.
Hey. We are going to get right into it here today. But once again, we're just looking at some more of the entries. We're going to try to get through the rest of them if we can. Still a good amount, but we're going to try to move at a good pace and get through a bunch of these. Joined once again by Mike and Aaron. Mike, you just want to give a little introduction there for yourself to start us off?
Who am I? Michael Rinaldi. There you go. Rinaldi Studio Press. Model builder, professional, whatever. Somebody says I can weather pretty decent, so I would put some opinions on some Gundams and stuff and see what happened and see if we can come up with some good critiques for everyone today. Finish this up, see if we can push through. Ready to rock.
Yes. All right. Aaron, go for it.
Yep. Aaron Simons, modeler, fanatic, weathering lover, and pumped ready to critique today.
All right. Yes, indeed. It's part 2, so just a brief introduction is fine. You guys, I mean, those of you guys watching, I mean, you guys should know Mike and Aaron already, so we're just going to get right down to it because we still got, how many we have left?
Yeah, I can't be friends. If you don't know who we are, I can't be friends with anybody. If you just don't know who we are, don't be my friend. So that's all I got to say on that one.
No. 62 today, so
all
right, we're going to go through these. And let's start off here with Eugene's Zuda. We're going to be taking a look at here today. So I really like this one. This was one of our finalists that we talked about quite a bit as well too. So what did you guys think about this one, Mike?
Yeah, this was one we talked about at length. It does get into the conversations about what we all kind of feel weathering should kind of be, where there's some story happening with this guy. The pose helps. The photography was good and clear. He does change the pose through the photos, which we do critique a little bit of, hey, try to fix the pose up, but we know why you guys are showing different views, which is okay. But the photos are cleared towards the weathering, which was nice. The chipping's restrained. It was in scale. It's pretty tight, which is in compared to some of the other critiques from the first half. This one is a much better effort in terms of chipping and the technical aspects of the weathering. And then he's got some grime and grease in the appropriate areas. I think for me, if I'm looking for something from this one from Eugene to take it to that final next level to really be in the conversation of the remaining contestants at the top 3, if you will, if that's the conversation. Eugene, really, for what I'd like to see is everything I'm seeing here, and I think we mentioned this as I'm remembering our comments now, is this was very by the numbers for me. I think when I looked at this one looks how I think a modeler would interpret what you see from other modelers chipping and weathering and those kinds of conversations. And I think we talked about how this one was really, almost honestly, it was safe and it's well executed, but I wanted to see just something more interesting than what I'm seeing, not in a negative way, but just to push it to the next level, just a little bit more about the story of this piece, other than it's just a weathered, Gundam running around. And it was basic in that regard. So continue on. And I think the techniques were strong. It's just for now, I think when you compare it to the winners, there's a lack of life to this piece versus I think some of the other contestants. And I think that's kind of where Eugene's in the weathering conversation. And now he just needs to push into the next level of what he wants his Gundams to represent realistically.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything. I won't rehash it, but I think this model could have benefited from finding that really powerful pose, because it's quite a powerful looking piece of work.
Like this one here, right?
Something like that, just a really staunch, aggressive pose like that, and then give us some different angles of that pose, and I think that could have really helped to relay a bit more of a story. Because I just kind of looked at it and thought, it's fairly well done, but it wasn't like jumping out of the screen and grabbing hold of me, which is kind of what you want to try and do when you put something forward for a comp like that. But pretty good job, if I'm honest. Like there's done.
Yeah, we like this one for sure. We like this one.
You can see there's some solid skill there. Like this isn't the first time, So keep at it. Work on that story. Story's massive. Story's important.
Yeah, like Mike was saying, and I was thinking about this while we were looking at it at the same time, that it was quite restrained in like the chipping and stuff that he was doing. There's about, I think, next time, like restrain it even more, because I feel like in most of the kit it is like it looks just right, but there's just a few areas where you see like there's just a little bit of chipping where it just kind of looks like it wasn't really necessary, just a little bit too much in like certain areas with the sponge or whatever he applied. So pull it back even more. The next one, I think it'll be just right.
Yeah, you'd be, Eugene, you guys and everybody watching, you guys would be really surprised if you put half the number of chips on that model that this one has, how much it would still read the same way. So it really is about pulling down because of just kind of the enormity of the physicality of a 30 meter or 20 meter, whatever the size of your vehicle is. In this case, walking mech that's that big. How's that damage really going to happen? And so, to get there, that dude's fighting inside of outside of structures and whatever it is that's going to, the story's based upon. So really focus your efforts that way. And you'll see the improvements. You'll see it happen when you start to do that. So for sure.
This one is from Frank, and the only obsolete kit in the entire competition. So I thought it was interesting because it's the only one of those particular kits. But what did you think about this one, Aaron?
Yep. So look, I mean, I'm going to make an assumption that this is only a young guy, probably teenager or something like that, just kind of getting into it, finding his own style. And that's awesome. Like we talked about it a lot last time, that we all started somewhere. And it's through doing this type of stuff when you first get into it that you develop a style and that you get to where, you ultimately want to be. So awesome effort, and keep it up, keep pushing, you'll get there. One thing I do like about it is that you can see in that, especially in that image there, you can see some effort's gone into thinking about a gradient of weathering, which we talk a lot about, where it would obviously be more heavily weathered down towards the feet and legs and stuff, as opposed to it being, chipped evenly all over. So obviously there's been some deliberate effort put into that. So well done there. And again, just some refinement of technique and practice is really what's needed here. I think you can see all the elements are there, and you can see there's been some good attempts made, but it just needs refinement and just some practice and kind of control. But yeah, definite thought gone into it. So well done. But and one other thing too is the background. If you're going to go to the effort of putting paper or something behind it to photograph it, try to make sure that you think about not having bits of tape showing there. All those little things matter. Wrap the paper underneath it or something like that, and just give us a solid white background. It would have sort of then there's nothing to distract you when you're looking at it. You can really look at the model. But good effort.
Yeah, on that, I mean, if you guys have ever built any of these models are really, really small too. So I mean, just like a normal sheet of A4 paper really should fit for the model. Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, I like that he there's a one shot with the figure, and that's a 35th scale figure. So the relevance to reference a scale like this with the weapons, the mix of kind of you're branching into. You're trying to put in different elements from different genres of the hobby to kind of collate a story and scale like this, which I appreciate. So it's a good job there for pushing yourself to combine various elements to create kind of an overall theme to this. It probably doesn't help you for a painting and weathering competition, even though you're putting them in. So just on a time management effort, you're probably wasting time if you're spending it on other elements that aren't going to be relative to judging. So just be careful if you're in a contest and you're trying to finish, because to me, this one has a little bit of that unfinished, didn't quite make it to the end and kind of jammed it up at the very last second. And that's probably maybe the skill set as well. Maybe, like we commented before, Zach reminded me that some of the skills you're coming to the edge of your abilities. So there's a little bit of that here. And then Aaron's comments are very on point with everything else. And I would say just quickly, and we'll move on, is just, handle the basics. There's a couple mold lines that are visible in the kit. On the shoulders, the blue shoulders, make sure your basics, guys. Everybody listening, contest prep is the same for clean and weathered. It does not matter. Every seam on any model, if it's a plane, a tank, a robot, everybody's got to do the work, and that's what we're talking about. But I do like the cast efforts on the upper arm, shoulder with the cast texture versus the glossy gray head. You're doing some things, so just keep pushing, my friend, because you're on your way. You're doing good. Good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna mention about the mold lines as well too, but yes,
I was trying
Mike
to
took
steal
care
your
of that.
thunder.
And I mean, I also appreciate that he did this work here on the back as well too. Is something worth noting that on the inside there's nothing there; it's just empty. So he did some epoxy sculpting there just to kind of try to add some detail. And then some of this other stuff is also parts that I think are probably added from some different like armor models or something maybe.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with the machine, different genres for sure, which is cool. Yeah, keep going, man. Good stuff.
Adding in some more to it. So I don't know if that contributed to like the time management like you're talking about, Mike, but again, it's like you mentioned, if time is an issue for you, then maybe skip some of those steps and focus on what the real focus of the competition is on.
Yeah, I think while Zach pulls up the next one, that's just a side comment on competition work is if you're really looking to compete with other people, focus on the criteria of the competition first as your primary target. Don't worry about anything else. Bases, side stories, side pieces. It's not going to matter at the end of the day. If this is a weathering side, that's all we really, really, really care about. So, focus on that. That's for sure.
This is Geraldo with the 3.0 Master Grade Gundam.
That is Mike. Grandpa that's seen some shit. Yeah, he's been through some stuff, right? One thing, yeah, and this will be, I would say, realistic. Everybody's seen. You're probably all thinking the same. It's a bit over-weathered, and this is true. I think what's happening here is there's obviously too much of everything, and again, it's and what I mean by that is if when you look at this photo here that Zach's put up, you've got the lower ankle area has a similar amount of coloring and weathering. Then you go up to the upper calf area below the knee. It's the same visual weight of same type of weathering, and you're not giving us a disparity of height as you go up. And that's what the comment was on the previous one where Aaron's mentioned a gradation of the dirt and earth effects through the legs up higher because it gets less and less and less. And so all those apply to this one where you've got all this weathering going up the body of the machine, and it's all kind of the same weight of visual intensity. And that causes us to go, well, that's not realistic. And that's why we think it's over-weathered. So for this modeler here, pull all that back down as you move up. The higher you move up, start getting more and more restrained to give us the feeling that this is 18 meter tall and to get weathering up there, how does that happen? And so think about these things a little bit stronger because you're definitely passionate. You love the Gundam. It's the only RX-70, or one of the few in the weathered side. I know Klein had a lot of RX-72. So for me, it's just kind of a technique, refining your technique, refining your control, because everything's fine. It's kind of too much everywhere. And that's really the thing I really think you need to focus on. Everything else is pretty strong in terms of pose and all that fun stuff. But that's what I would suggest on this one.
Yeah. It's interesting about the weatherings. Just a second, Aaron, that I just wanted to say that what you're saying, Mike, about the weathering being kind of even all over the legs, but then it's even all through up the waist, and then it kind of like cuts off and like the
cuts
top
off a little bit
has
now.
no like rust.
Right.
So it's kind of the gradation, but it's kind of an abrupt change there. So go ahead, Aaron. Sorry.
Yeah, look, I think definitely overdone a little bit here, although the technique looks fairly solid. I think it's not so much the technique letting it down, it's more so maybe just got a bit crazy with the weathering to tone it back. The other thing with this model too is that with a white, predominantly white and very light grey, like you can go really light in terms of that weathering, especially if you're using such a contrasting weathering like the dark browns and those bits and pieces and the smoke sort of damage. So you can actually go extra light and still have quite a good effect on it. So yeah, maybe think about that. And again, back to what I said last time, this would be a hundreds of millions of dollar machine, and to get to that point of weathered would be unlikely. Like it would be maintained and things like that. So those types of things, when you see such extreme weathering, kind of jump out at me. It has a bit of a MiG ammo of MiG feel to it, maybe from In Combat 1.
I was just going to say, it really reminds me of the cover of that book.
Yeah. Perhaps maybe that was used for some inspiration. And I mean, if we all, again, that was probably over weathered for scale. But yeah, I like some of the poses. But yeah, just a bit overcooked, a little bit overcooked.
Yeah.
I am a little bit wondering actually if it's fully painted or if it's weathered right on top of the plastic, because it looks like those are the stickers. You see like how thick around the markings are. It almost kind of looks like he's used the stickers rather than water side decals. And then
Maybe
just like
a flat coat, right?
Just trying to think like
I'm getting in close and dirty here. I'm trying to scope out even closer.
I think it's painted. I think it is painted.
You think so?
Yeah.
I'm not sure, because all the colors are like the exact colors that the kit's molded in. I know. I mean, of course, you could recreate that, but it does look like in some of the photos, it looks like it's giving me that look of like when you see weathering applied right directly onto the plastic.
Sure.
I don't know.
Well, hey man, if you're watching, drop us a comment. Let us know.
Yeah.
Interesting. I think as far as like if it is, it's one of the best that I've seen as far as like weathering directly on the plastic, because usually it's really pretty hard to make it look any good. But like you guys said, I mean, the technique is there, and
I'm seeing some pre-shading on the white. It might be painted. I think it might have been painted there for a second, but yeah, I think we hit the points on that one though. Geraldo,
just a note on that though. A note on that for all the guys out there that do want to weather on plastic. Absolutely can be done. I've seen some amazing work done. Just remember, plastic's all nice and glossy and got that translucent sort of look to it. If you just mat it down first and then start your weathering, you'll get such a better result at the end.
This one is from Gunpla Lukito.
Lukito.
Yes.
Me first?
Go for it.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Aaron.
Look, I gotta say, I really like this one. I like it. I like the photos, and I know it's like kind of all blue and grey, but just for some reason, I just think that the stance on it is cool. Like if I look at the sort of those pods on the leg and everything, they're quite well done. They're quite well weathered. It's sort of a different style of weathering, almost like it's not your classic chipping, then streaking and staining. It's kind of more of a like overall grime kind of look to it, which if you want to get into the argument about scale, this is probably close to what it would really be like. They'd get dirty, but they wouldn't necessarily be covered in chipping and stuff like that. So yeah, I really liked this one. I think a few things like in terms of to sort of bring it to life would be we need a little bit more contrast. Now, whether that's through the colors you might choose, a bit of interest in there to break up some of that blue, and where you've got like blue and grey and maybe a couple of shades of blue. Blue's a tough one. We talked about that last time. If you're going to put things like filters and washes over blue, then it'll bring it all to kind of look like the same color, which is sort of what I would say from this. Like at first glance, it almost looks like the whole thing is blue except for those white parts on the chest. So maybe think about in terms of a bit more color interest in there just to sort of help it pop, and then that'll give some contrast between where the panels are clean versus dirty, and it'll really kind of bring that weathering to life. But yeah, again, I like it. I think it's a pretty cool little model, so well done.
Yeah, Mike.
Am I seeing camouflage? The little pots of kind of olive green tone. I think this has actually got a bit of a camo pattern on it, to be honest with you.
Is that what it is?
I chalked that up to the filtering on it.
I thought so too at first, but I'm looking through this and it's kind of everywhere. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is like a real subtle kind of Navy SEAL-esque kind of camo kind of an idea, maybe, if I'm reading this correctly, which may or not be the best of comments, only because if we're trying to figure it, and I'm not 100% sure if it's a filter or a camo, that probably means is to the modeler listening is that the idea is there. The execution's not quite probably what you hoped it would be. Because I'm a little confused. I'm not saying this in a bad way. Just I don't know is my answer, and that's kind of not the best of it. Like, is it got a little bit? I think it might, but it's a mix of weathering and then maybe that as well in some parts. But it works. It does work, like Aaron says, overall, in terms of taking it to where you probably want to go in the next level. Because I'm seeing some customization. I'm seeing some understanding of kind of the realism of what a machine like this would probably look like in reality. So I like that part about it. And there are some opportunities with the dark tones. Anytime using a dark tone, regardless of its space environment or not, you do have opportunity to contrast with a lighter tone of a dust or an earth or some sort of chemical oil or leakage or something to kind of, you can do some other things. So I actually think, to me, this one, I like it just as, but it looks like 80% done to me. And I kind of want to shove you down the road a little bit forcefully and just say, you know what, you need to spend a little bit more time just hammering things home. Not in a negative way, because I think you're kind of in that cusp of you're going there. And I don't know how to maybe articulate that the best, but I think you're at the tip of something where your next few pieces with a little bit, maybe either pulling some reference from somewhere else to get kind of something crisper. Because I just don't know what that is. It looks like it's got like a splotchiness all over it. So I like it. It's just I'm not 100% sure what I'm seeing, and that's good or bad. I don't take it at heart.
Yeah, it's funny, Mike, what you're saying. I think what could really help this is some like edge highlighting, like bringing out some of the definition between components with some edge highlighting, because I'm losing some of that detail in its overall kind of wash.
Yeah, I'm going through. Let's see. So Gunpla Lukito. Yeah, I think keep going. This is you obviously embraced all of this stuff without being copycat, and you've got your own style happening. I think that's what we see. Your own personal style happening. So
that's exactly what I was going to say. Actually, the thing that I really like most about this model is the style, the colors. I mean, I can see it's a bit of like a kind of a wash of blue, minus the white vents. But I mean, I'm kind of fine with it. It reminds me of the Jesta. I mean, the Jesta is like that too. It's just dark blue. That's all.
Yeah.
I actually kind of really like this.
The Guison is just green.
Yeah. So I mean, there's nothing wrong with it necessarily being like all primarily one color. I think probably what's causing it to be a little bit more kind of washed out, it's like you guys said, it's just because of the filtering over the top of that. Like Aaron was talking about, you just have to be careful over the blues and everything. But yeah, I think it has a really cool style to it. And yeah, definitely. And it's interesting you mentioned about the scale of it being correct, Aaron. I was going to say that I thought that it looked, because of the weathering style that he did with it, it kind of made me think that it's a bit more like kind of what Bro Builder was going for, changing it to look a bit more like a 1/6 scale, sort of like a sort of human-sized robot, or like a 10-foot tall style kind of robot that's been dirty.
Again, though, we sort of don't know, like we're having to guess and make that up. So not such a strong theme with it. So again, we talked a lot about theme and what are you trying to convey? What's the story you're telling? And while we're changing over, that sort of stuff is not just fluff, right? Like, we're not just saying it because it sounds cool. Oh, you've got to have a good story. It actually helps the way you view things. So it's important in that if you can look at a model and you can immediately understand what it's about, it's not just a model that's painted well. It actually conveys it helps you kind of like come to grips with what they've done stylistically, what they've actually, their techniques they've used, and it's really important. It's not, it's not sort of one of those throwaway things like, don't worry about story, I'll just concentrate and do the best technique. You'll never win competitions that way. And if you look like pretty much across the board, anything that wins any competition of note around the world, you look at it, yes, it's executed beautifully, but it is also an amazing concept, awesome story, and it's those sorts of things that really set models apart. So it is super important.
Yeah. You just have, I think, like going into a project, having some sort of like really good idea that you're passionate about, or a story that you're passionate about, really comes through. I mean, you can tell someone who like had that and someone who just kind of went through the motions of, I'm going to make this a weathered get, you know.
And you can see it on the clean side too, guys, because I was scoping the judging out while they were chatting the other day, and you can see when the winners go up even on the clean side, that element still is present. It doesn't always. This isn't like a weathering direct thing. There's kind of a vision of the artist's vision, the whole thing, and then it does relate to. I think in weathering, if you're going to have that conversation, it's a little bit of like think of it more of like a snapshot in time, and you're capturing that vehicle in that moment in time, and then, well, how did it get to that moment in time is kind of what we mean by story. Like, it doesn't have to be like, well, it's driving to the gas station to feel like, that's not what we're talking about. It's like, no, the life of something. Like, how did I get all this gray hair? Well, it's because I've been around for 50 years. So like, there's a story there, and like, you're snapping a picture of me today, like this beautiful face, like, but how did I get there? And so that's what you're trying to capture, is think of it kind of in that context of like, well, you wash your car on a Sunday. Well, on Friday, it looks like crap. So how did it get there? Well, Monday through Thursday is your story. But Friday is what you're trying to do, is represent all the elements that happen to it, if that helps anybody. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's just bullshit. But Zach said me that. I wrote it all down. So this is Zach trying to tell me what to say. So I don't know what's
Let's move on here to Jason. Okay. Here we've been taking a look at these photos.
Yeah, the Leo.
So go for it, Mike.
It's a really cool little Leo here he's got. I kind of like the idea that he's taken some other elements from other machines and customized it slightly. And there's a couple pictures in here with the pose, the front on pose with the hands down by the side. There's some good stuff going on with just kind of understanding this. There's not a ton of weathering on this one, to be truthful. You could almost argue that it's not, it's on the lighter side of weathering. It's a scruffy looking dude, if that makes sense. It's not heavily chipped. There's almost no chipping or anything of that nature, which is totally fine. No worries there. But it also doesn't have anything else to kind of convey too much more than, it's kind of, the weathering is in the paint. We talked about that on some other builds. It's coming through the paint itself. Kind of an idea. There's not a ton for me to really critique in terms of technique, other than just, if you're going to be doing this, and there is some light dry brushing and some scuffing going on, I think it's kind of a conversation about just fine tune the basics, make sure that paint job just sings across the board. It's a little rough in places, and it could be, the photos might be cell phone and a little slightly blurry-ish, but that's kind of where I'm going with this one, is just refine everything you're doing at the basic level, and you'll see an improvement happen immediately. Otherwise, it's just really nicely done. It's super, the little green spots, nice color choices there. They're harmonious with a little bit of pop. There's not a ton to talk about on the weathering side for this one.
Yeah, Aaron.
Yeah, I mean, agreed. A couple extra things I would add is, again, be conscious if you're using like a really dark olive drab, or even like I mean, it almost looks like weathered bronze, the bulk of the unit there. Then if that's what you're going for, then you have to sell that. But if that's just the color that you painted it and then you want to weather it, again, you're fighting against such a dark color to really showcase your weathering. And in this competition, it was a weathered comp, so you want to be conscious of that. You're giving yourself every chance to be able to showcase that stuff. Another thing too about just photographing models in general, be aware if you're photographing a model on a mirror, you're going to get weird lighting coming off that mirror as it's reflecting up, right? So if you've done work where you've put shadows, you've actually put shadow work in there, the mirror's going to kill all of that work that you've done, because it will naturally bounce light up and diffuse those shadows. So you end up getting, that's a pretty good one there, Zach. You can see like in the inner thigh and stuff like that, it's exactly the same lighting as it is, on the top of the thigh. And it wouldn't be if, we had kind of more natural lighting there, and that's purely because it's bouncing up from the mirror. So just be careful of photographing models on a mirror. It can really kind of change the entire look of a model.
Yeah, for me, I think my favorite part about this is actually just the little bit of kit bashing that's going on. I think his choice to use like the Gyaradoga shield, I think, does fit pretty well with the Leo. And the axe, maybe not the placement of the axe up on the top of the shield is a bit awkward. If you had like the shield here and the axe in the other hand, and then just kept it in just like one cool pose, I think that would have just like helped keep the focus on the customization that he's done with it, rather than seeing in a bunch of different poses. And The light green for me, because it looks so much like the color of like the kit, the original kit, it almost looks like he painted it and then like those couple areas maybe the paint was a little bit too rough or something, so then he sanded it down and then took these photos before painting it over it again, so it looks like those areas are actually not painted, but they are just in like a light green or something. But so yeah, the paint work I think is kind of where you have like a cool idea for the custom, and I think the paintwork just kind of lets that down a little bit. You got a train going by there again, Mike? What's that?
Yeah, you guys hear this? I don't, I'm so out of tune with that because it just sounds like the ocean crash, and that's what I think I'm at the beach, and that keeps me calm. Yeah, there's a train outside. There'll be sirens any minute, by the way, from last time.
I'm waiting.
That night was so bad, dude. I was like, what is going on? And then the next night it was dead quiet, no sirens at all. So I felt bad, didn't I? Yeah.
All right, our next one here is actually the winner. So I want to give equal time to this one as well too, but because
we can come back to this one as well, or do you want to put them off? I want to push them back till maybe later. What do you want to do?
It's up to you guys. I mean, I'm just going down the list alphabetically, so that's where we're here on next. But if you guys want to save it for later, that's fine.
I reckon we should just do it because I think that everyone watching will get a lot from our feedback on this model. So let's make sure we do it.
Okay.
Do it now.
Right on. Okay. Yeah, totally cool. This was all right. As Tim used in the clean, it's all right. It's okay. Next. No.
Aaron. Who wants to start? Aaron, Mike? Go for it.
Okay, I'll start. Yeah, so again, we kind of all picked this, definitely in our top three, and then when we discussed it, we all agreed unanimously that this was our winner. So, and I think it's pretty evident when you look at it why it's very well executed. It's been done well, but that's kind of the first part of it. It's been done well, so great technique. Very nice photography, which obviously helps as well. But it has a real sense of life to it. So, you literally look at it and expect it to move. It's perfectly in scale, which, it's a 1/12 scale model, so that's easier to get in scale. But even still, credit to the builder, it's really in scale. It's been done really well. The lighting's fantastic on it. And then it's got all these other elements which just kept adding to the story. So had it just been, a well-painted C-3PO in a nice pose, it would have been a good model, but it wouldn't have won. But when we started adding in all the other elements to it, the little dragonfly, the life, that slight tilt of the head really sort of sold it. And, then there's things like the wood panel on the leg and all the other little bits of scratch building, cabling and stuff. And, so... really, really skills. We can obviously see the skills of the modeler here. But it had life, like it really had life. So when we're talking about story, this is a perfect example. If you look at it and you can immediately, you don't have to guess what's going on. There's only really one way to interpret it, and it just sells it, beautifully. So I'll leave it there and let Mike add in the rest of the feedback, because obviously we could talk about it for a while.
Yeah, and we can always come back at another time to reinforce a lot of stuff. This, again, to tick the boxes to everyone that up to this point of what we've been talking about, it's what I just said a few minutes ago. Like, you can kind of see almost immediately when you look at this piece and comparative to the other ones in a competitive sense, this thing survived from first day of life till this day, and you can see that there is a backstory to the piece. That's what we're talking about. There's also a literal story to the piece where it's the pose. It's looking at as a robot, it's looking at the realistic insect on his hand, and kind of, you can see the computations, and we have a familiarity to it as a Star Wars piece, but then he's taken it into a new realm. So now he's shifted gears on us. And as a viewers, it's hard to, because it's almost like a jury at a trial. Like, if anybody doesn't know who C-3PO is at this point in time, we can't help you out, because we all know who C-3PO is and that whole thing. And so head tilt, is very much keen to that. But at the same time, your brain's going, wait a minute, this is steampunk, but it's not. But everything reads really well. You know, the tattoo on the arm and kind of the tattoo on the butt and the wood on the shin. So all of that played really well. And we knew from the judging through the top 10, we kind of knew what had already won. And it was clear to all three of us from separate genres of what we all three judges are, that we all had the same idea almost immediately. That itself is a really good sign that this piece is successful. And, you know, because you're having three different opinions from three different modelers who all thought the same kind of basic thing about this, which means the author did his job. And that's what we're trying to talk about with weathering, is that it's very clear. There's no real, we don't have to figure anything out with this one. It brings us in. We want to see more. We want to know why. And when you get to that from a mental aspect of weathering, now the piece resonates with the viewer, and that's a memorable thing. That's what we're talking about, with story, with life, with all these things. And so from a technical side of it, going the other way, I could probably knock some of the chipping and get kind of nitty gritty, but I think that takes away from this. And so the reason it elevates to the winning spot above number 2, which we'll get to down the road, is we'll see that there's number 2 has a slightly better technical skill, but number 1, this one, it just resonates across all the boards. You immediately know what it is. And we all liked it. It's a pleasing piece. It's really well done. Colors are nice. The tones are nice. Photography emphasizes it. He captured the mood, and mood was just the tinge that we needed to tickle our nuts to make this the winner. And that's the difference, guys, what we talk about. This is why. So this is what I wanted to compare it to everybody else of why, you know, this one isn't there. Well, look at this one and you see immediately what that is. That's kind of, I could talk forever with this one. This one's really cool.
And definitely, I think you guys mentioned about the photography as well too. But I mean, I think, again, while it's not a photography competition and it's only kind of a small thing to consider for the judging, how much the photography just helps this as well too. I mean, it's not a huge part of the judging, but it can help out immensely just to have some nice photographs and just for us to be able to do our job, to be able to see everything very well. And it's like dark, and like some of them we talked about last time, that some people were having photos where it's like too dark and stuff, and some parts of these are dark, but you can see what you need to see, and like the focus is well placed in the photos, so it's good.
Yeah, it's a good example of someone not taking a picture of their model, but actually understanding that the picture is what's being judged. Right. So the composition of the picture, what's in focus, you know, like they've given enough white space, albeit though that it's black, they've given enough white space around the subject so that you really can focus in on it. So that helps hugely. But, you know, this would have probably won either way. You know, it's a great little model. I'd love to see it. You know, and if you know when you're judging, if you would love to actually see it, you know, it's a good build.
Masumoni Shadow in the comments. The reason you have that is because if you go 100% on the critical technical aspect of painting and weathering, then what happens is you then turn into just a numbers competition of, you know, who can weather the best from a technical standpoint. And that's not the point of the competition, because in all competitions around the world, even if this is the criteria, you do weight out all the other elements to the piece, because that's what separates the pieces at the end of the day. Because if we all weather to 100% technical skill ability, you take the human element out of scale modeling at that point in time, you know, and especially for a fantasy piece, you know, you're not even talking tanks and planes, my friend. I mean, you're not even talking looking at a reference photo and saying, okay, well, that's not how it was, because now you're in the artistic side, and you can't remove the artistic element to this kind of competition to just go 100% technique only. And that's kind of, those were put in the rules. It's clearly stated, hey, it's not, there is a little bit to other things that we're going to give some weight to. So that's kind of why, to answer your question, that's why you have this competition, because we're human and we're artists, and it's expression. It's like, I listened to Franz, the winner in the clean side, in his interview with Aomeka yesterday. Is that this is a form of expression to him, and it's not Gunpla's freedom. It's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, he's an artist. He's got a view. He's got a point of view, and he's getting it across. Technically, yeah, but that's what separated the two pieces when we talked about it. Is one was slightly technically better, but one was a little bit better on the human element that we all preferred and thought it was a better piece because of it. and that's why you do that. So hopefully that answers it. And there's no 100% answer to that. You're going to have your opinion. So it's going to be, every show has that conversation in the background, to be truthful.
Well, yeah, totally. And if anyone wants, just for reference, kind of how we're kind of thinking of the scoring. I don't remember if I actually put this in text form anywhere, like in the rules, but I had it here, like in my notes for it, that is basically 50% of what we were looking at was the finish. So that's definitely the main thing. But then 20% creativity, 20% the actual build, like seam lines, mold lines, things like that, and then 10% on the photos and the pose. So, yeah, Mike said I won't.
A lot of shows, Mastermind. A lot of shows. To Shadow, to answer your question even more, a lot of shows around the world that it doesn't matter if it's Gunpla or whatever. That's kind of, there's a proportional breakup of 50 to 60 to 70% of the weight of the importance of that topic. This is painting and weathering, so that's the weight of it. But there is all these little, and we have these so we can separate the men from the boys a little bit, if that makes sense. Yeah. Because you need something else. You can't just go, because I can say to this guy, well, 100% of this is a technique. He screwed up the hairspray, whatever. And then Judge over here goes, well, no, because and then you have an argument on technique, and it just causes more problems. So remember, this is human, so it's not robotic in that sense. That helps too.
Even though I get
what you're saying. Yeah, I get. Yeah, totally. I totally get exactly the irony, the sheer irony.
Yes. So, thank you for explaining that for me, so I didn't have to explain that, Mike. Let's go ahead and take a look at Jeremy's here. Jeremy's ball. Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah, like it's cool to see a ball. I like that. Again, I would say it's a bit of a tough one because I'm going to give the same feedback that it's kind of weathered all over now. In reality, it's much smaller in terms of its real size, so it could probably be justified. But even still, like there's been some effort there you can see on the manipulators or on the claws to make them, more chipped and weathered. So good effort there. You've thought about that, so that's great. But some of the chipping, like on the ball itself, like it's sort of just, it's almost like I've got to do chipping here, accentuate this panel line, more chipping here, more chipping here, more chipping there, and it's kind of just sort of the same amount of chipping over the whole thing, and it almost looks uniform. Which if you're ever doing weathering and you get to a point where it's uniform, you need to try and break that up because that's just not how things happen in the real world. But no, pretty decent technique. A lot of the previous feedback we've given about the dark colors is evident here. Always a bit of a challenge, and especially where you're showing up the bright metal underneath. It's really contrasty against the dark. But yeah, I mean, pretty cool little piece. But again, definitely some restraint needed and a bit more of a story to sort of sell at home.
I don't know if I'm going to take the words out of your mouth on this one, Mike, but I'll just say, because you said like kind of the same comment for the Zuda we looked at earlier. If this had half of what was on here, then it would, be looking so much nicer. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. No, I agree 100%. And then I think there's probably a little bit of early days of learning weathering and the techniques. So you're combining that with improving your own skill set. So nothing in a critical negative sense. In other words, just keep improving and focusing on the brush strokes and to improve the actual precision. And then, like we've been talking about, and you can see as you follow the winner, it's a good comparison of where you probably need to be pushing some of the things, because there is actually some similarities. It's an iconic figure because of the geometry in the ball. We all recognize it immediately, that whole thing. So you can do some stuff as the background for the piece and what was going on here. So just again, I'd say as a younger modeler starting out in weathering, just keep going and keep practicing, and it's a good solid piece. It's just it's not hitting home in certain kind of other aspects we were looking for, but yeah, keep it up.
Yeah. All right. Jesse is up next here with the what is it? Curios. I'm looking at it and getting a bit confused because I was thinking the head looks a little bit different, but it's the Curios here. Here we are.
Yeah, so I'll just grab this one real quick because it's the same. So this is where we go with the same conversation with like what we said before, is where you're taking the sponge and you're just throwing stuff on here, and it's not a negative, guys. Just understand this. We're not trying to like knock you down, but when you start doing this, just try to think a little bit more about what's really happening versus just taking a sponge and dabbing it all over everything to kind of get an effect. Which, if that's what you're over for, that's totally cool. But in terms of competitive sense, you could really, you're at very early stages, my friend, of starting out on something. So you do understand the technique of what it is and what it does. But I think just dabbing that all over this model isn't probably going to do you a ton of favors. Again, I'd say take 70% of these out and you'd probably still have a very effective piece. Like it doesn't even need to be like you've just gone everywhere. And that's, hey, dude, trust me, bro. When I started this, I was Mr. Sponge in every damn thing on the planet. But that's kind of what I'm saying is listen to this and just pull it way back. And I think you'd probably be 1,000 times better on this one versus, and it's pretty straightforward and cut and dry. I don't really see any real wrong things, maybe some basics going on there a little bit, but I'll let Zach pull that apart if he wants to.
No, yeah. Aaron?
Yeah, I mean, obviously a little bit overdone, bit spongering happy on the on the technique side of things, and also too remember that like sponging as a technique of applying chipping effect is always really only part one, right? So if you're going to put any type of chipping on there, it's not just I paint my chipping on with either a brush or a sponge or whatever. There's other layers that then need to go on top to really sell it. Otherwise it just looks like spots all over your work, right? So I would also say, like, yes, show some, tone that back a bit, but then also explore some of those other follow-up techniques that really help sell that kind of, chipped metal and damage and things like that. It's not just sponging and then step away from it and go, yep, cool, it's weathered. There's a lot more to it. There's a lot more layers that need to be applied to really sell it. And
there's a silence.
Here comes the sirens. Yeah. Can't wait for that door to get kicked in, Mike, behind you.
Someday.
And then the other thing is just for these photos like what we're looking at right now, quite a wide shot. Very hard to sort of judge anything from this shot. So maybe think about how you're kind of sending those pictures to the judges, right? So just be conscious that everyone has to sell it. You don't just have to go, right, here's a close-up of the shoulder, now I need a full-length body one, whatever. You need to think about how are they going to see this and how are they going to be able to actually judge my model from this photo.
The only thing that while we're looking at this, that I would want to add is that I think if he hadn't weathered this at all and entered it in the clean side, it actually probably would have been like a really successful clean build because the colors are cool and everything looks pretty cool on it. I like that about it, just from like the colors and just the finish.
I actually thought the same thing, Zach. I think this is a painter who is taking the leap into weathering, and I think that there's probably just a slight disconnect. And truth be told, I think the paint's strong. I think you probably would have really, but I think it's also you probably wanted to push yourself, Jesse, or if that's the name, and I appreciate that. But again, I think it's early days, brother, and it's just no worries. It's not negative. Don't take that any way home. It's just early days, my friend. We all got to crawl before we can walk and all that fun stuff, to quote another model.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I thought, while I think it would have been a really nice clean entry, if you wanted to take that step into weathering, then you got to start somewhere. So by all means. All right. This next one is a pretty interesting one here as well, too. Let me go ahead. This one is Jonathan L. This was a really interesting one for us, I think.
We talked a bit about this one. I think Aaron's got some good comments.
Do you want me to start?
Yeah,
go for
it. So we did talk about this a lot, and initially, I don't think I picked this in my top 10 because when I first looked at it, I sort of thought, it's a bit overdone. and it wasn't until we actually kind of talked about it and we really scrutinized it that I started to see more in it that I liked. And I really ended up liking it a lot after that discussion. So there are some really good things going on with it. Like there is definite attempt to have like a gradient of weathering. Like you can definitely see like on the underside of things, there's a lot more weathering. Some of that work around like where the hand goes into the forearm, that's that kind of discoloration and work around there is very well executed. We actually wondered whether or not this brush painted. There's a few shots of it, especially around the chest and whatnot, that really look like it's been brush painted. And if it has been brush painted, then full credit. You've done a really, really nice job of it. So it was quite well done. There's also some nice kind of just general panel texturing, which I would sort of call out. So, people when they do weathering, they kind of just think, okay, this is a blue panel, so I'm going to do some light weathering around the edges, and contrasting blue, and maybe show the metal through in parts. But I like how you've actually got other tones of blue over the whole panel where it would kind of be discolored from maybe water damage, all these other things. So they're more advanced techniques of weathering, which, the more we looked at this, we could start to see some advanced techniques in the weathering, and a lot of colors that you normally wouldn't use unless you were quite comfortable with kind of weathering and you kind of knew what you were doing. So there's lots of beiges and other colors in there that do actually take quite a bit of skill to use them the right way and still kind of read well. But yeah, I mean, in terms of just maybe what I would give as some advice is maybe just tone it down a touch, because your technique is really good and you've really thought about things like highlights and shadows and all these other bits and pieces to really make things pop. So really solid technique. I wouldn't be surprised if you do a bit of miniature painting and things like that, because there's some technique coming through there. But yeah, maybe just tone it down a touch and it would really kind of come to life. But yeah, it is pretty cool. I did really end up liking this, so it was good that we discussed it.
Yeah,
Mike?
Yeah, Jonathan, I was a champion of your piece, my friend. Just listening to Aaron talk about this and then scrolling through the photos myself, and then going back and thinking about our conversation on this particular one, and not to be that it was dismissed originally, but because it's so stylistic and it is a very stylized artistic impression. And so to the comments about why we do judging, this would be so hard to judge on a technique 1-to-1 to the winner, because there's so much human element going on here. And this author, Jonathan L., is really put in a signature artistic style, which resonated to me, and I was a champion of it, and I tried to fight it up the food chain, because I think a couple shots, like Zach, put the back piece up, just the full, please, the full back one. This one here, when you zoom out on this one, if you squinted and put some text on this, it actually looks almost like a box art painting to me, in terms of kind of the sheen over the back of the rear lower butt shield, and then the shoulder sheen over here. It looks like a machine to me. It looks like it's got a metallic element to it, that this is actually a machine and not a painted scale model. And I like that part about it. That resonated to me, and I really appreciated kind of this author's specific style. And I think what Aaron is saying with the brush painting is that it's not in the airbrush category of what that was. I think it's much more along the lines of, say, what we see with Kawagiyama and Lincoln Wright and kind of the brush painting machine and Krieger crowd, and even the miniature 40K crowd, and kind of your blending of stuff here, brother. Whatever you're doing, I love it. I really, really do. It is a little clumsy in spots, and I think it kicks it down the order. But I fought this one pretty hard just as a judge, because I think you're on to something. You really, really are, and I wanted to encourage that for you, because I think this is you've got something here, and that is just it's a wonderful piece of art on the surface, and it just happens to be a robot carrying a battle axe on a dirty plane. So I love that part about it. And to the question about photography, this is one of the few to me that with the black background and the colors you chose and the lighting of the piece, it really worked. It doesn't hinder you with the black background, which some people don't like. I think in this case, this is how you use black and how you light a piece when you shoot against black. So everybody watching photography wise, everything hit home. It's just a little bit not quite on the technique basis, but dude, you are coming on strong with whatever it is you've got going on in your coffee, and I want some of it because I love a lot of this, and I think that's what Aaron and Zach will kind of. I think when we talked about it, I was fighting for this one. Like, come on, man! So I like this piece a lot. There's a lot of good.
I'd like to see more of his work too. So
me too. Yeah, this makes me want to follow you. Yeah, I'd want to follow you on Instagram and see what you're up to all the time. I want to sneak peek. You know, it's cool. It's very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. So if you're watching, ping me and I'll follow you. So I can see more of your work.
For sure.
Yeah, it definitely among. I mean, just whether Gunpla kits that we see in general, but I mean, just even among this competition as well too. It had such a unique style to it that really stood out from the other ones. And I love all the different colors and everything that he's using in there. It's very interesting to look at. Yeah, definitely.
Color harmony works. And what I mean by that is the red plays with the blue really nicely. It's a nice pop, but it's not so vibrant that it just distracts you, and it looks believable. And I love the elbows and that chest, how it darkens up in here. And it's just, that's all brushed in there. He's painted that all in there outside of the lighting catching it. And so props to him for really thinking that through. That's a game changer where I think Jonathan in a year is going to be, if he comes back around to play in another competition, could rock the boat a little bit for some other dudes, you know, kind of a conversation. I like this piece a lot, John. Did a good job, buddy. Really did. Yeah. Cool piece.
Let's look at Jose. Yes, Jose. I think this is have we seen any Machine Krieger ones? So this is the first one. There was a few Machine Krieger entries. I think this is the first one we're looking at, yeah?
This is the first. There's a couple.
You go, Mark. You go.
Okay. Yeah, this probably falls in the category, and we might be speeding up a little bit, so apologize for this, just because this one falls into its early days in terms of learning weathering. What we're seeing here, you're just starting to embrace chipping and scratching and getting the joints dirty. Everything's kind of in the right place, and I think this modeler is just kind of learning the ropes, and that's all awesome to see because you're on the way. Just refine your techniques a little bit, work on your streaking and your brush strokes, and just really practice that more. Just keep practicing what you've got on in the photos here. Everything we've talked about with pictures and all this stuff. I like the pale blue color gray scheme. You know, nice choice of colors with a little pop of green. It's really cool. But yeah, just keep going, man. Just keep pushing.
Yeah, like, I mean, I would say just, you know, people are probably thinking out there, you know, we've spent so much time saying just tone it back and everything. And like, I would say that this falls into the category of being kind of toned back a bit. But bear in mind that this is a much different scale. So, yeah, when we say tone it back, what we should really say is tone it back for the scale, you know, because in this one being, you know, a much smaller scale, you can actually kind of go for it because it will sell a lot better in terms of to the eye. But yeah, I mean, the chipping on this, I actually don't mind. I think it's pretty good. And if you had followed up that chipping with, you know, streaking and kind of staining around that chipping, the hell is that?
Just pretend, you know.
I think it would have really been well done, but some of the streaking that is there is a bit kind of brutish. You can see like a big fat brush has been there and it hasn't been kind of feathered out, and that sort of breaks the illusion. But you know, work on that technique in particular with a model of this scale, because you can really use it to your advantage, and you can have things dripping from seam lines and joints, and you've got a lot to work with there. And it would be a really solid build. But yeah, I don't hate it though, you know, like I do like it, you know.
I just think it's early days.
Yeah, and going back to, we talked about this last time and you mentioned it earlier, Mike, I think it's just he probably just hit that wall of his experience level at this point so far. And it's probably just maybe the first or second kit that he's tried some of these techniques on, so just doesn't have that experience there yet to know how to do some of the refinements and things like what Aaron's talking about. So,
is this the one Is this the one that we were kind of wondering, speculating about how that lettering was done, whether that's actually raised?
That was, I actually on the last one. I think that we
okay.
didn't really talk about that, but yeah, that was something that let me
There's
just
some hand
go back
painted on the previous one.
because I think it was like on the thigh or something, or no, maybe not. No, maybe we haven't gotten to that one yet. Yeah.
Don't go back. Let's just keep pushing forward.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So Joseph is next here with
Barbatos.
some more. Yep, some more Arm Blood Orphan stuff. Here we are.
There we go, Aaron. All you, buddy.
Yeah, go for it, Aaron.
Cool. Yeah, can we have, yeah, there we go.
Just
So
trying to get
look,
to a wider shot here first for you.
yeah. I'm trying to think of something new to say because you know a lot of the same stuff we've said obviously is going to apply, but yeah, I mean, again, overall, it's kind of weathered heavily overall. You know, I do like some of the things there. Like there's a bit of a smoke effect there. One of the kind of fins on the head is broken off and damaged. So you know, there's been some effort there to kind of add in battle damage, which, you know, if we think about what these machines' sole purpose is, some of the designs would definitely get damaged like that, right? Like these very thin and vulnerable fins and stuff. I do quite like seeing where they've kind of, you know, put some damage into that stuff because it would definitely happen. Yeah, but look, if I can say one thing about this, it would just be, again, it's too much. It's probably too much, and definitely not to scale. But you know, from a stylistic point of view, it does look pretty cool. I mean, I do quite like it. It's got a nice little base. I think you've done well on that base. It's pretty understated, but it's at least a complete and full base, which kind of helps with sort of selling the scale. You've got the little dude walking around down there below and stuff. So, you know, there are some elements that are quite cool. But yeah, just work on refining that technique and bringing everything down, and I think you'll get a much better effect. And with such sort of like muted, you know, colors, sometimes it can be hard to kind of bring out that definition. So maybe think about, you know, some color pops in there to sort of help us kind of say, oh, okay, there's distinction between these elements of the model. And then that might kind of help you sort of map out your weathering on the model.
Mike.
Yeah, I would say, as I'm thinking about this, listen to Aaron, I think this is probably a commentary a little bit about for the beginner levels out there that are, because there's one thing, this competition is a little unique and the beginners are kind of thrown in with everybody as well. So I'm trying to give advice to where, okay, Joe, where you're at with this. I'm thinking in my head, I think just you're probably very early days of working in the weathering conversation about battle damage and chipping and scratching. And it's, you love the fact that Barbatos is a beast. And I like the color choices here to repaint, the custom. I think they actually kind of work pretty strong overall, nicely done. They're harmonious and the colors look good. It's going to be for you just practicing and just like a lot of the younger modelers out there listening. Think of this like sports, guys, like really, if this in music or sports or whatever requires you to put in an hour a day, like basketball, to practice your free throws. It's the same conversation with chips and scratches, believe it or not. Put in an hour a day. I had an art instructor in school and he'd make us draw perfect circles for the first 20 minutes of class before we did anything else for like a whole semester. I tell you what, by the end of the semester, we could draw an effing circle. And you'd be surprised what that does to people. And this is to Joe and the younger crowd in particular. Embrace that. Come in and have a test piece, to have another old IBO kit, whatever it is that you like, and just play with it and just practice technique, practice. Don't worry about anything, but just practice it and practice it. And I think your chips will come on stronger, faster as you grow up in, 5 more years. That's all you have to do half the time. And I think a lot of guys, you want to compete, but you haven't done the work to get to the playoffs yet. Like you have to have your whole season of competition. And that's what chipping is, and scratching, all that work. Keep doing that. That's honestly going to help you more than anything else moving forward in this specific conversation, I'd say. Trying to give more like overall advice kind of a thing. If that helps.
Yeah. I think with weathering too, weathering has a very unique progression curve, right? It has I'm just trying a few little bits here and there, then I kind of get a handle on things and it goes really high and you weather the shit out of everything. And then I think it comes back down and levels out to something more kind of refined and reserved. So it's pretty natural progression. The other thing too about what you were saying, Mike, about practice and, you know, refine those techniques, that is so true. And so many people don't do that, right? They just move on to the next model. They spend so long building it, then they get to the weathering stage and it doesn't come off and they think, it's hard. You know, and there's an old saying about fail faster. So it doesn't mean you have to go out and buy a whole bunch of plastic spoons and practice all your techniques on those. I would actually advise you not to. But
don't do that.
You know, build things where you can get to that skill quicker, right? Like if you're spending months on a build and you only get to do the weathering after that, like you're not getting enough practice with the technique. So you want to get to a point where you're not that invested in the model that if you don't pull it off with it or you kind of ruin it, it's not a big deal, right? Like you can, so that fail faster mentality is a really good way. And then it just helps you build technique. And then when you do invest months in a model, you're confident that you can actually pull it off, you know?
Yes. Just last thing I want to add to this for me personally before we move on is that, I think once again with this one, kind of my favorite thing that I like about it actually is just kind of the customization that he's done. Aaron mentioned about the broken V-fin, and it's actually quite interesting that among these, like seeing a lot of like physical damage, broken pieces of armor and stuff, we actually haven't seen a lot of that throughout this competition. I would have expected kind of more of that, but it's mostly just been weathering things applied over the paint, right? Not so much physical damage. So I think that part looks cool. And again, I like that it's like just the one piece broken rather than having like half the armor pieces all broken and falling off and things like that. The customization is cool. I don't really like the extra spikes added onto this. I get the idea, but especially I think because the welding is so huge and the fact that they're a different color looks a bit odd. I guess maybe his point was that those were taken from other suits and then welded onto there, so that's why they're a different color. That makes sense, I suppose, if that was the thinking. But that's one thing that I don't particularly like about the customization. But the rest of the customization is cool, so I think he did cool work with this kit. Yeah, definitely. Okay. Next, we've got another Joseph with another weathered kit. Wouldn't you know it?
This is Joseph Lee.
Yeah.
The
Zaku.
Are we seriously only up for the J's?
Yeah, this is the experiment kit, right? Zaku experiment.
Yes.
I actually like this suit a lot.
With added unicorn fin. They're not from the unicorn, but I mean just in the fact that it's a horn there.
Right on.
And a mossy anchor.
So Joseph Lee, this is going to be the same. I think personally, it's just like exactly you two are going back to back. It's your two peas in the same pod. It's going to really be about embracing kind of your need to get better is going to embrace fully what we just talked about. And I wanted to add to Aaron's comments a second ago was that experience are the projects. Like each model builds experience, but practice is different. It's not the same thing. You have to sit down and just like you do for sports, you have to go to the soccer field and practice every day before you play a match. And that's kind of embrace that a little bit. And I know that the 10 of you out there that are going to do that and the 100 are going to tell me to F off. Trust me, the 10 guys that actually embrace that concept of practice, even if it's 5-10 minutes a day at the bench before you do anything else and you're just doing a little Jimmy Jam, totally cool, bro. Just it's muscle memory. It's all this stuff. And that's what Joseph Lee and a lot of you guys in this, and we're kind of saying this one, because we have 8,000 guys to get through. So we're going to I'm trying to force this down a little bit into, you're kind of in the same group of conversation of, it's more of a sponge technique where you're dabbing in the colors around, you're using different colors, all awesome stuff. Just keep doing it, keep practicing, keep pushing yourself. Trust me, it comes faster than you believe it, but you've got to fail. You got to do more like this where it doesn't quite hit home. The little gray specks everywhere. It's too much, that whole conversation, but don't take it to heart. just, you know, put the bit between your teeth and go, keep pushing and all that kind of stuff. That's what I'd have to say on this one.
Yeah, same here. A little bit overdone, but you know, I think the colors are cool. Like you definitely choice of colors was what was clever. Like in terms of for weathering comp, you can work with a lot. You know, there's a lot there to work with. So that's great. But yeah, just a bit overcooked. You know.
As far as the colors, that was something that I was gonna say. I think
Get some more water. I'll be right back.
yeah, sure. I think obviously much less chipping, and I think some more filtering and stuff. I think would have definitely been really nice on this,
Especially on the yellow.
It's an aquatic suit, so you know you get some nice like that white washed over that and stuff. I think would look really nice. It's funny. It's an interesting bit to add that it's holding anchor. I thought that's a cool thing. Not like it's a haha funny, but an interesting point, unique point to have it holding the anchor there. That was cool.
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. No, there's some good stuff here, Jeff. Don't take anything negative in that. This is just, we think you're on the cusp of learning a lot of this. So just that's where you need to focus it. The story, the anchor, the pose, all good. The colors, background. Again, dark background, dark piece actually kind of works though. You know, the gray and the gray, it's all kind of playing well. The yellow pops. No, it's good. Yeah.
The scribing also looks pretty sharp. The scribing is added to it. I think it looks pretty good around there on the legs and then up on the top of the head. Looks pretty good. Like this bit, those bits added there. So technically, those all look good as well too.
Yeah, there's some speckling. There's a lot of stuff to this, and I just think it's, you know, this is a modeler who Joseph Lee, and you know, in a few more builds, it'll start to click a little bit better for you. I think if you just keep pushing, man. Yeah.
Here we've got not Joseph Lee, now Joshua Lee. Very similar names between the two of them. Don't get confused. Here we have the Metal Gear Rex.
All right, my boy Josh. All right, because I know this person, you know, particular. I fought for you a little bit on this one. I will say, and this is to the boys in the crew here, Mike Skyers and all you listening out here. And Bro Builder, even I know you guys are going to loop back. Let me use this piece because I'm kind of waiting for Rex to pop up on this one of what we talk about for time management and competition builds. We'll get the weathering's really mellow. It's super cool. I think your techniques, there's some really nice stuff happening here, and we'll point out in a sec. But just real quick overall, don't bite off more than you can chew for a show or a competition. If this is your goal to compete, and I mean that in that regard only, because I know some of you have other plans for a lot of these pieces too, and you just kind of threw it, and that's cool too. But if you're going to compete and you're going to really take this on to try to win something like this with a Rex, don't correct me. I mean, well, correct me if I'm wrong. This is a pretty solid model, and there's a lot to do. So physicality wise, this is a huge chunk of plastic to paint and weather in a short amount of time. So on that note, I think, Josh, you probably cut yourself off a little bit just by choosing this kit. And while I think I understand, you know, your point of it, I just on a time management point of view, work towards the end game of the competition in the time frame you're given, because you're not going to get another opportunity to put something down. And if you don't make it, or you put something down like this, where I think you're at about 75% done, truthfully told, you're going to hurt yourself. And we're all going to learn that. Trust me, dude, you're talking to the king of missing deadlines. So it's all good, but just take my experience and failures and understand that that's what I'm trying to get to you, is that because I would have loved to seen this one done and completely finished, I think, what your vision really was. There's some really nice chipping on the leg parts where the lighter colors popping through the green, really delicate. And that's beautiful. When we talk about scale, guys, this piece has a lot of really delicate scale weathering on it. And just, it's, you know, I don't even know if it's 50% done, to be truthful. So I just think this is a time management piece where he put it down. I respect that you got it this far. You got to really, and honestly, look, some of you guys out there, write a script out. Week 2, I need to be here. Week 4, I need to be here. Like, put it down on paper, on a board, on a wall. So you know that you've got to get that done. And if you can't get it done, then you have to sacrifice something else. And that can mean a custom part or a damaged part. You got to learn to compromise and sacrifice if you're going to customize and build a big piece versus a little piece. Because I still say you have 2 months. you shouldn't be doing more than HG kits to really, really win this show. That Bandai C3PO is this big. So that's a conversation in time management to me, what this piece is. And it's not to take away from the weather. And I think there's some nice stuff here. It's just, you know, it's that whole conversation, I think, is kind of what happened here.
Yeah, look, I mean, I agree with all of that. And when I looked at this, I kind of thought that initially I could see that, you know, that's a good shot you've got there, Zach. Like you can see that there's been some effort to, you know, break up that paneling with some of that staining on that center panel. But it's not consistent over the whole model. Like, and what I kind of imagined happened was it would have taken you quite a long time to build it. That paint job would have taken some effort, a lot of masking. So when you get to the weathering, because you've had to push in such a short time to get it done, you haven't been able to take that consistent technique across the whole model and really send it home, because there's some parts that are just kind of missing that type of love, but they are in a place in that model where they would be weathered as well. So there was it kind of looked a bit like, for me, a bit inconsistent in the areas that you'd had kind of worked on, and I kind of only could put that down to maybe the time in there. Also, too, with such a huge model like this, it's sort of hard to show off things unless you're zooming in really close to different parts. And when for those areas where you have zoomed in and there's some really nice photos there, we can see some very solid technique, and you've obviously got a lot of skill. But yeah, like you could have built something half the size and then put all that extra time into really finessing out your weathering, and it would have been outstanding. You know what I mean? Because the size of the model and the complexity of the build doesn't give you extra points in terms of the judging. You know?
Sure. Yeah, we talked about that, I think, a little bit in the last one, where you have to keep in mind which model you're going to choose for the competition, right? Because, yeah, like you said, it doesn't matter whether you're working on an SD or a PG. The complexity of the model is only going to help or hurt you, you know, along the way. But
and there's certain comps where it might say that in the rules, but in reality, that's not true. Like GBWC is a perfect example, right? Technically, anything can win that, but if you've been to a few of them, that's just not the case, right? Like if you want to be the only modeler over there with an HG in the cabinet, well, good luck to you, because it's going to look weird when there's these huge, incredible models there, and you've got this little dinky thing there. It's going to be hard. But for a photography-based comp, you don't have that limitation there. You don't have to build a big, imposing model to sort of to fight for your place. You can just build something manageable and then put the work into what actually is being judged as the weathering and paint work and stuff.
I mean, all that said, though, I will say, I mean, it is also, you know, some props to him for taking on a bit more of a challenge too. As well, so.
Hey, look, and he could be shaking his head going, what? Like, I built it in 2 days and I painted it, and like, you know, what do you guys don't know what you're talking about. I mean, look, happy to be corrected, but
sure, no.
Well,
like I said, I'm familiar with Joshua Lee's work, and I think his skills. I just think for someone like him, who is on the cusp again of really achieving really true high level work, and this is outside of even competition. It's just going to be, you know, it's more of just a management to the finished end, and just kind of seeing this. I think we all liked this and wanted to really like it a lot more. It's just, you start to really kind of feel under that, guys. And this is why we're saying this, is to help you guys understand that, look, if you're going to play to an end goal, then you have to be honest to that end goal. And this is the perfect conversation topic one for me to say about, like, this isn't a GBWC one, so you don't have 6 months or a year plan to get, like, you. So take that in, like, really to heart, and like, don't feel like attacked or this is any kind of negative. It's just, no, to help you guys achieve these things, this is what you have to really think about so that you can put your piece and compete 1-to-1. And that's what I want to see. I want to see your best on that day. And that's kind of what this is a little bit about in terms of the harsh reality of show topic type stuff and all those kind of things. So yeah, meant to help, obviously meant to really help you guys improve.
Yeah, and I pulled up the next one, so I'm trying to move us along. But I do want to just mention one more thing too about the Rex is that while it didn't end up being one of the winners, I mean personally it's definitely one of my favorites because I just really love the design, and I think he did a really awesome job on the model. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Within the competition, you know, he wasn't able to place in the top 2, but for me personally, I liked it a lot. So
I was saying that to you, Mike. A lot of that, because I saw your Instagram, not to cut you off, Zach, but it's Mike Skyers in the thing. Yeah, I saw your post on that, brother, and I felt for you. I really felt hard. I was like, damn it, because I wanted to see what you could do. I've been following you for a little while, Mike Skyers in the feed. So just, yeah, brother, I got you, but just, you have to really bite that bullet hard, man. And it's with anything like that, you know, you can't get stuck doing all the other stuff when it wasn't about that. So it's cool. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. This is another Joshua. We had 2 Josephs, now 2 Joshuas here. So this is Joshua S here with, I think this is our one of the only Macross things we had in the competition.
I think so. I don't think there's a clean one either, right?
I don't think so, yeah. So interesting. There was also no frame arms in the entire competition either, which is quite interesting.
There were no DOMs in the competition either, but we're not going to talk about that.
Only there was the one half DOM, I think, right? One was like a DOM or something. All right. As for this one, I'll let you guys go ahead and talk about this. I'll be right back. You guys go ahead.
Aaron, go for it, bud.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so
keep it going.
It's funny that we come to this one straight after the Rex because, you know, similar type of machine, you know, big heavy legs, you know, kind of small kind of hull, and then, you know, big arms and stuff like that. But because this is obviously a lot smaller physical model, you know, they've been able to really put the time into kind of that contrasty weathering, and you know, it's kind of sells it a lot more. It's not lost in just the sheer size of it all. But yeah, I mean, I actually really like the choice of colors in terms of for a weathering comp. Like, you know, we've spent a lot of time talking about be careful with dark colors, but because the dark colors, there's a lot of fading in that black or that dark gray, and then that's contrast against the white and the red, which again, the red has got a lot of fading and a lot of kind of like shadow painted in there and everything. I think it really works. Perhaps a little bit too happy on the sponging. Like, it just seems to be sponged all over. I can see parts there, but this was one of the few that actually had that kind of faded paint effect that we were talking about, Mike. You know, like a lot of people forget to kind of include that in there. They just go from a nice solid color to, you know, chipping, you know, filters, whatever, and forget about that, you know, very powerful technique of kind of fading paint. So for something like a black or a dark blue, that's your best friend. You know, you can really kind of, it's still black, it's still like a really dark color, but because you've added that fading in there, it gives you that palette then to kind of put chipping and weathering over those areas and still sell it, you know, as a full model. So yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah. No, it's. I remember watching. This is when Zach and I did our interview years ago. I don't know how many we've done, 1 or 2, but we talked a little bit about Macross and like at least my personal arc of, you know, coming into the science fiction modeling crowd in terms of this. This was one of the, you know, I remember these. This is the officer pod, I think, right? If I'm not mistaken.
You're asking the wrong person on that one.
No. I think so. Chat, you'll tell us, but. And this Aaron's comments also play to clean builders out there too, especially with dark tones. You have anytime you paint a color in a certain range of its percentage, say it's 100% black, and you paint it in 80% black, which is a gray to us. You now have 20% to play with up here, and you have 60% to play, or 70% to play with it below. So when you play with dark tones or really pure tones, like even the reds, remember that you've got a light and a dark shade to work with to balance this whole thing around. And this works for clean and build as well, because it's the same. There were some comments on that part of judging too, with just pure painting. And even though with the weathering side, you're going towards a faded, worn, used look, which is what we want to see in that conversation, you're now giving yourself opportunities as an author. So just take to heart when we talk about like the really dark blue ones or the really dark gray ones, what we're talking about is this modeler here understands that and is trying to work within the range of that. Even if it's dark, he's got a range of colors going on. And that's a really important thing with painting and weathering and realism in miniatures, whether it's clean or weathered, it's the same color theory application. When you go 100% white or 100% black, you've eliminated half of your color choices because you can only go down. So you do, this to me that's the part of this model. The other stuff Aaron said, I'll tick those other boxes. But also for what I think is kind of a younger modeler too, this is a really nice, just basic level of photos. It's a clean, easy background. We can see the pictures, or we can see the model clearly. There's no distract. There's a couple wrinkles of the paper. I don't care about that. It's just nice, clean, super. This is base level photography, guys. Just give us this, and that's what we can go from there because we can see the model. So this is props to this guy. I think there's a lot of good here on this Joshua S. On what he's doing, where he's going.
Yeah, another thing about the faded panels thing that you just jogged my memory there, Mike, too, is again, it's very evident the people that have studied weathered machines versus have applied some techniques that they may have learned. And you've got to remember that, like, our goal is to make it look realistic, right, with weathering. That's why you do it. So the technique alone won't get you there. Using real world reference is a huge thing, and try to copy what you see. And you know, aircraft are a good example. Like if you look at most, you know, US military aircraft, they're essentially gray, right? And if you look at a gray aircraft, when that thing is freshly painted, is probably the only time that would be the same tone of gray over that whole aircraft, because after that, every angle, panel, everything on it becomes its own kind of different tone. You know, there's different materials there, so they weather differently, and that gives that interest. And if you look at, you know, some of those beat up, you know, F-14s and stuff like that, where there's like so many other colors there, you know, except gray, but we know it's a gray aircraft. So you know, that's what you can kind of play with. Yes, I know this is black, but it's not actually black, right? There's all these other things going on.
Your brain will connect. Yeah, your brain will connect those dots. Yeah.
So look at reference photos, guys. Like reference photos, if you're not, you know, if you're passionate about weathering and you really want to build your technique, get to a competition level, I would expect you have a folder on your phone where you just take random shots of anything weathered. Like I do, I've got millions of photos. I could be out anywhere and go, wow, that's cool how that's kind of weathered. I'll take a photo of it, right? Yeah. And I use that stuff as my reference for, shit, I didn't know rust could streak like that. I didn't realize it could be that bad. And, you know, and like if you've got some real world reference and you try to literally copy that, it's just such a better way to approach it, you know. And then after a while, you just know how it does it, so you can kind of recreate it without reference.
Yep. Yes. We need to make a Facebook group that's only for sharing reference photos that people come across. So no actual sharing any pictures of models, just pictures of stuff you come across.
There's gotta be one.
There's gotta be one. I'm sure there's a blog or something.
Yeah,
there's a few really good hashtags on Insta that I follow for weathered stuff, and like weathered on Insta's, you get some weird ones on there, but you also do get a lot of good reference weathered shot stuff.
A couple old ladies come through, but
yeah, things that I go, what the hell? Why would you pack weathered in there?
All right, this one is Justin. And again, we've got two Justins. This is the first of our two Justins to go through. The HG Heavyarms here.
Yeah, I'll try to be a little bit. Yeah, I'll try to be quick on this one because I know we're probably pushing time again. But I actually think this is one of the few that there's some hairspray chip in, if I'm not mistaken, Justin. And if I'm honest here, I'm thinking you probably were using Vallejo, if I had to guess, because of the way the flakes have come off. And there's some pure technique stuff going on here. I think you're trying some stuff, and there's tip of the hat to that, my friend, because it's not many guys have gone that in that road in this competition. So good on you for doing that and trying that. And I think, again, like most of the other younger builders out there, it's just going to be mileage and getting your practice in and just fine tuning and honing your techniques to convey what this is. Everything's kind of out, all the chips and scratches are largely out of scale for what we would probably realistically see. And again, that's not like a super negative. It's just, you're probably just starting to really get into this. So it's early days, like you hear me saying a lot. I'd like the outdoor on your farm, brother. Look, okay, here you go. There it is, right? I'm looking at a photo. What's behind the Gundam, everybody? There's a beautiful weathered barn that is just literally right in front of them. And you could even see the dirt and the mud as it creeps up from the wet earth and the rain through the wood. Dude, there it is, brother. Just look at the farm. Go around the farm and then just paint what you see. Yeah. So no, this is just early days, my friend. Keep pushing, Justin. I mean, just everything we've been saying forever for all the younger guys out there, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is that I thought this too. This looks like maybe hairspray, and maybe that's a good thing to talk about in terms of techniques. So this is probably one of the only subtractive techniques that we've seen, right? So
yeah, it looks like it.
And that's great. Like that, you can get an awesome result with it, right? But with subtractive type techniques, they're a bit harder to control because once it's gone, it's gone. Right, but remember that doesn't mean you can't come and put it back on, right? Like you can come and brush things back in if you take off too much with the technique. Sometimes you can use that to your advantage, but because by putting it back in, you get that difference between the original paint job where you've had to repaint something to cover up where you've chipped it a bit too hard. So just because you're using a subtractive type of technique doesn't mean you can't then put an additive one on top of it, right? So I would have, with some of these chips, they're obviously a bit oversized. It could have been cool if you had to come in and just resprayed a few of them and given that illusion that it had been repaired and things like that. You can use it to your advantage.
Yeah. That is one thing I feel like we haven't really seen a whole lot of necessarily in this competition of seeing stuff that has been repaired. We've seen a lot of obviously stuff that's been damaged, weathered, and all that stuff, but that whole repair aspect it's always kind of interesting to see as well too. Happens kind
especially
of
like
weathering.
For armor and aircraft, like if you're trying to do weathering well, repaired parts of it is essential to sell the realism. I've always felt. Like in particular with aircraft, like, freshly painted panels in amongst a really shitty bunch of panels, like things like that really sell at home because in reality, that's what it's like, right? Like they take the panel off to get to some access and they repaint it while they've got it off and put it back on. And, that sort of stuff is essential to sell realism. Okay, is it me? Me first?
This is our other, actually 3 Justins, our Justin in the middle here. So there you go. Okay.
So look, again, I think we all kind of know where we're headed now. Classic case of just a bit overcooked. It's over the whole model. So obviously a lot of restraint needed here. Also too, like scale-wise, it's quite a way out in terms of, because there's so much of it, it's kind of overpowering. It's almost getting to a point like, is that a grey model with white all over it, or is that a white model with grey all over it? So you're at that tipping point of where it's a bit hard to sort of tell. So definitely dial it back a bit, and then I think you would immediately get a better result if you just did like a quarter of that what you've got there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, I would say this one I'll be just brief for the interest of time because it does tick a lot of the same boxes with the same comments and stuff. That's okay, buddy. These are early days for you, and just it's going to be everything we talked about: studying real life, practicing your techniques a little bit more, and then implementing that on the projects. And that's all that this is. I'm guessing very early days for you, and just embrace everything we're talking about if you're looking to improve. And I think you'll see rapid results if you take some of that to heart and really move it on to the next one. So just keep going, man. Just a lot of the stuff you guys are learning. Hey man, it's not negatives, and please don't take it this way because we all had to start somewhere. So I don't like to be, brief with this because I'd love to get into it, but this is kind of in the same conversation we've had for 20 other ones. And I want to make sure that we really, tell you what's going on. But at the same time, if you watch the stream, you'll get where we're going with this one for sure. For sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
And just one thing that I'll just add is that I think he has done some nice work before and after the weathering as well too. Some nice detail painting on this because this is a HG, so it's a really small kit. So he's done some nice work just painting in some little details, and especially around here on the backpack as well too. So I mean, that is not easy to do on such a small kit like this. And I think the photography looks pretty nice. It's pretty well lit for the most part. You got kind of the right stuff in focus, and some like soft colors there in the background just make the photos look kind of nice. So
yeah, he's used his depth of field like kind of to his advantage there, blurred away that background there, which is cool.
Yep, yeah. So the presentation of it is fine. So yeah, just working on the weathering techniques is kind of the main thing. So all right, one more, Justin. Here is this was one of our finalists here as well too. The little petite guy.
Yeah. Am I up? Is it me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
I think I like this one. So my initial this is an interesting comment on just judging in general. When you blow through the whole contest and you're trying to just kind of get a first pick. This is one of the ones to me that originally when I first saw it, I really liked it, and I enjoyed that about this piece. There's some technique stuff that pull it down a little bit, but here's a literal story. So we talk about story a lot. This one actually is a real literal story. So I would really embrace that. And this is what really, tickled my fancy. I love the leaking oil on the wood. I love kind of the repurposed scale. Is my interpretation was almost, it kind of looks like an abandoned decorative toy piece or some sort of storefront display versus an actual like robot that kind of went through some stuff, because the battery is kind of a cool. It's the Optima dry cell battery, by the way, brother. Which I love the fact that it's actually kind of that. So there's some things that I correlate to, and this is the positive of this piece. It was really strong for me. It's like this is one of the better story pieces of the competition. So in that aspect, the weathering embraces the story. To Masamumi's comments from an hour ago, here's where the technique falls down a little bit. The chipping, the scratching, it's nicely done. There is maybe some reductive and additive techniques combined. Colors are nice. It's just overall probably just a more refinement of your skill set, and you might be bumping up against your upper level of your plateau and your skills to pull off your vision. So you're kind of in that plateau of you're going up, and then you got this vision, and you want to connect that dot. So this one I fought for. I really felt strongly about this one. It resonated. I loved it. The salt chipping, I love the color scheme. It kind of, for me, worked for me. So I was a fan. I think technically the chipping on the barrel probably doesn't quite work as well, even though I kind of see what you're doing. But this was a cool piece. This was a fun one. This one I probably had a little bit lighthearted kind of attitude. But to guys that like to chip in, like the author did a great job. The top of the head, really nicely done in terms of the rusted off, and then it's believable, and a lot of it works for me. This is a strong one for me.
Yeah, Aaron, if I can just real quick, I just want to mention that I think that it kind of goes back to what I was saying about the Metal Gear Rex, about the complexity of the model, where ultimately this super simple, tiny little kit and the Rex, which is a much larger, much more complex kit, among our 86 entries, if we did actually rank them, these actually kind of placed very near each other, both quite near the top. And it's just interesting that they're completely different as far as like the complexity of the models. So it's a good example of that. Go ahead, Aaron.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so look, I won't repeat anything that everyone said. We all really like this. It's a cool little model. Great little.
I think he's in chat. Is this yours? Okay, sweet.
What I will say though about this one is that this is a good example of where you can actually take extreme weathering too, right? So we've been going on a lot about you got to be more reserved, you got to do that and everything. But there is a point where you can go over, and then you're selling a different type of weathering. So this is what I think would be an example of where this is something that's like, it's beyond paint chipping now. There's barely any paint left on it type thing, and all you're seeing is the bare kind of metal under it, rusted and worn. So this is kind of like over that point where it's like we wouldn't be telling you to wind it back You know, like you've actually sold it to that extreme point quite well. So yeah,
fully abandoned, right? It's just basically abandoned on the side of a whatever this is. Yeah.
And it sort of sells to me like it's something that was painted from the factory but never looked after, just repaired in situ, never been repainted, and it's just kind of worn away to almost back down to metal, and it's just all rusted and you know, dying there in a scrap heap somewhere. So I think that, you know, you've actually thought about a story and what you want to convey, and you've executed it really well. So you know, that's a good example of where I wouldn't say, look, dial it back, it's too overdone, right? Not a generic bit of feedback we always give. You know, there is a point where you've got you're selling a different level of weathering and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I really like some of the things, like the little wood stain and the whole thing. But cool little model.
Kind of reminds me of like how you're saying like some sort of old toy or something. It reminds me a bit of like just like one of those animatronic kind of things you would see in like a circus or something, kind of like a fair. And it's just kind of, it was broken, so maybe they just kind of left it there, and then the circus moved on or whatever, and it's just kind of this leftover thing that's just been abandoned there, or in like an abandoned theme park or something kind of thing.
Yeah,
so,
he could be a new character in Toy Story 4 or 5.
Yeah, there you go.
Or with that video game, you know, the No Man's Land or whatever, those kind of hardcore apocalyptic type games in the background, you know.
Or I was thinking maybe just because of the sharp teeth, and it was giving me kind of like a Five Nights at Freddy's.
There's a slight horror. There's a slight low-key horror vibe going on here, which I'm cool with. To wrap this one up, and Skids, I'm glad you're here. To everybody listening, this is one of those in particular that the weathering sells the piece to us. This is what we're talking about. The weathering here was the focus of the competition. This modeler and author took it to heart, and he embraced his concept as a weathering concept to compete in this category. That's what we're talking about in terms of when you really want to see about story and life and all the other stuff we've been hitting on a little bit. This one sells it, even though it's strong. You know, like Aaron said, it's not over weather, but there's a lot going on, so it's like whatever. But that sells it to us, and it really is effective. There's some minor stuff here, Skids, for just work on your technique, brother. Just keep pushing. There's a book, and I can't remember the name. The dude's out of like Thailand or something. He did the K2SO like this. And I think this is probably kind of where you're coming from a little bit, if you know what I'm talking about. And I see everything you're doing. And I think for me, I would say to you now, like the bleeding of the rust off the head, you're going to have to refine that, really pull that in, sell it to me hard now. And that's your next level jump, because everything's awesome on this piece. It's in the top 10. It was like in the meat of the group, but I think you could have easily gone toe to toe with C-3PO if you really were your skills. And that's kind of, yeah. So I know what you're talking about. I know where you're going with it, and you're just do it, brother. Fucking get it. Go. Love it. Yeah. This is one of my favorites.
Here we have Kevin's.
Is it me? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, so this one, I was initially, I wondered whether or not it was in the wrong category. It didn't look immediately weathered, but then when I start zooming in, I think this is a really great example of showing that kind of restraint with the weathering, and putting effort into the areas that actually would take the biggest beating. Great photography in this one as well. So, you know, that really helps. And, you know, I guess a lot of awesome poses with it as well. So you could have just chosen one of those poses and kept it with that. I really like this type of thing because it's like you know, you can kind of see the movement in the piece. It's not a static pose. It's like literally caught mid, you know, something. So it's very cool. Yeah, like the only thing I would say in terms of the weathering is that you've shown a lot of kind of control with the chipping, but then like everything else looks pretty clean and tidy. So it was a little bit disjointed where you didn't marry it up with kind of some dirt and some, you know, some sort of like grime and things, and in places that would kind of sell that really subtle chipping. Some of the decals on it are like pristinely new, and decals are a really good area to sort of focus your weathering on. It can really sort of sell it. But no, it was all. I mean, nice model. Really like the colours. And the little bits of. I think there's some added stuff there. I'm not sure whether those cables are part of the kit. Like I think you might have added.
I mean, there's a lot of kit bashing going on. I'm actually looking at this and just like trying to think. But yeah, it's like 30 minutes mission kind of base. But yeah, there's a lot of other different parts. The chest part is actually from Origins Gundam kit.
Yeah. What's the base 30-minute missions kit for that? Like I can't.
I want to say it's kind of a lot of the Portanova space type. Basically,
it's got the Titanfall parcel.
It does. It really does, especially the eye and stuff. But yeah, like I can't believe I'm saying this, but what I would say is maybe you could go a little bit more, because you've got good technique and you really know how to kind of sell what you're doing there. So you could maybe go a little bit harder and really accentuate that weathering there. Would have been cool.
Yeah, for me, the heart of Aaron's comment is, and I think Jack does too, is we all three of us really, really like this piece in terms of what this is. As far as a weathered piece, it does go down a little bit, just a tad. I think this is a bottom top 10 type of piece, because in studying this even more, there's a lot of really nice stuff going on here with how you chip stuff at the feet, at the ankles, and then moving up kind of, and this kind of went to the granddaddy one that we looked at a while back. This is the opposite of that, but it's a very effective opposite of that, of what I was trying to convey a little bit about how you're playing in the scale of what you're talking about, of what this is, of whether it's kind of a drone size mech or it's Titanfall, which is a pretty sizable, Gundam size mech as well. So it kind of plays in that, but everything's appropriate to its size. So to me, that's working on the chips on the back shoulders and some of the stuff very effectively used. And the guys that just did chipping, kind of saying, to those of you that we said, well, this is too much and this is too that, this is a piece to look at as kind of what we're talking about where it's successful. It really works. It sold the piece. This looks like a machine to me, and it doesn't look like a scale model. And that's the crossover point, boys and girls, of that's what we're talking about in relationship to, painting a robot combat machine to look effectively real. This one captures that to me. I don't think it's probably, like Aaron says, I probably want to see a little bit more oomph, give me a little shove, because for competition, you need to bring a little bit something extra. And that's all that misses on this one, is it just misses a little bit something extra. Because, and to Brian, if you're listening, Bro Bill out there, when I talked about your Sananju Stein repurposed and scaled, this is kind of a color scheme I had kind of in my vision of what I think when I talked about like this is something what I was thinking, that's in my head. Like I was trying to figure out like what to tell them. This would work really well for kind of what that one was with Bro Builders a little bit to hit home what this, because this reads to me as kind of a drone fighter type process. And I like that about it. So very successful, just probably not quite enough for us to really put in the top grouping, but really good piece, this one.
Yeah. Just last thing I'll say too is that it's kind of the same comment I had about the Curios we saw earlier, is that if it actually didn't have any weathering on it, I think this would have done really well in the clean category as well too, actually, because it's just a really cool model, nicely painted and everything.
Yeah. No, Kevin, you're a good modeler, brother. That's a good piece. Trust me, it's a really good piece.
Yeah. All right. Here we have the Zaku 2 Desert Custom from Kirokaze. This is another really quite unique, interesting one. Yeah.
It's got the condo vibes going. I love it.
Yeah. And I mean, it was quite unique that it had the sort of logo and like it's raised. And I'm guessing it's just cut from plot plate or something like that. But certainly different from anything we've seen in the competition to have some of the really unique elements like that. But as far as the weathering and everything else, who's up? Mike?
Am I up? Okay. Yeah, because I think like you, Zach, I think the subject matter resonates hard on me with this. I just love this piece straight up out of the gate. When I saw it, I just like, oh, I love anybody that kind of really bites this off and goes for it. The shoulder armor, what Zach's talking about with the logo, I mean, it's brilliantly done. There's a lot of great stuff. I like the color choices here, the red hands with the red piping, the red shoulder, but the toned down desert scheme. This one, unfortunately, this is where this is the tough part of being a judge. You know, the decals, you can see some silvering, you can see the edges. A lot of the basic techniques here, you probably could have spent a little bit more time nailing this down, because I would put you in the category of, this is a very stylized vision, kind of like Jonathan L's with the blue Guison that we kind of referenced. This is a very stylistic piece, so I'm not going to grade you on if it's airbrushed or hairspray tipped or anything. I'm not worried about that. You have a vision, and I'm trying to judge your whole vision. And to me, some of the basics are letting you down a little bit here. This is one, I think in 4 or 5 years, this modeler could win a show like outright. I think there's a real creative vision here. There's a real understanding of Gunpla, of Kondo, of manga, of canon, of everything. This person knows his shit. And I'm not even going to argue that. But you look under the skirts in the back, there's a lot of detail there. The chipping on the little green hinges on the flap, nicely done. There's a lot of wonderful stuff, but those little streaks that come down from it bug me, because they're just kind of clumsy in my opinion. I think you could really fine tune your techniques, your basics, and you're going to elevate to a top level model builder, like hands down. This is one of my favorites in the show. I wanted it to be better than when it got close to it. And that's not a critique. It's just, you know, it's not a negative, I should say. It is a critique, but I don't want it to be like a negative for you, because I really want to push you up, because this is one of those where I'm like, dude, you should have won. Realistically, you probably could have beat everybody with this one. And that's just take that, embrace that, and say, you know what, Michael Jordan, go hit your free throws for 3 weeks straight, because you'll nail this one. You know, that kind of a thing. That's what I felt in this one.
Yeah, look, I mean,
go ahead, Aaron.
Oh, he's in the chat. Sweet. Yeah. I hope you embrace that, Kiro, because that's what I'm saying, man. Like you're on the cusp, brother. You really are.
Yes, the other thing I'll kind of add there is about like specifically what let it down is the streaking for me. Like your streaking, you need to work on that as a technique. And so that for me kind of stopped you from getting higher up, obviously. But your chipping and that kind of, can we show that back skirt shot again, Zach? Like your chipping and that kind of use of the different tones of that desert color there to sort of accentuate where there's dirt build up, but then it's kind of like chipped again, and you can see it. That's really, really high quality. Like, and the fading of that decal on the back there, beautifully executed. But then I just look at those sort of skirts on the back of the legs there, and the streaking just jumps out at me as it hasn't been feathered out enough. It's not kind of working. And I think, like, looking at your level of skill there, I think that you probably appreciate more kind of harder feedback. I think you can take it in terms of you definitely know what you're doing. So I think you'll benefit from just us picking out the bits that really kind of bring it down. So again, it's not a criticism, but I think like you're really quite a good modeler, so you could probably benefit from sort of just being told that streaking, work on that as a technique, because if that had been feathered and more to scale, it would have really helped the whole piece kind of come home. And then just think about some things like the undersides of the forearms are like perfectly clean, versus that kind of that level of where you've kind of weathered high wear areas, but the backs of those arms, which would be very high wear areas if you think about it, they're like perfectly clean. So that sort of stuff jumps out at me as like maybe you ran out of time. I don't think it's because you didn't think they'd be weathered. I think it's just maybe you kind of put your concentration into the areas where you could, and then perhaps ran out of time and couldn't do it consistently everywhere else. But yeah, you can tell immediately your techniques are, really, really high level. So I agree with Mike. Like, I think if you just refine some of those other things, you could definitely be competitive on a world sort of stage.
Yeah, what you're saying about the back of the arms, I noticed that earlier about the backpack as well too. I was thinking that you got some different stuff going on here with the backpack, and because of the mechanical elements of that, I think you'd see some more stuff going on there. Yeah, I think like Mike was saying, I'm sure we all have this. I mean, when you first look at this, it's a really striking piece, and it's a really attractive piece.
It's a magazine cover.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, totally.
It's a magazine cover, and then
Yeah. So it looks great. I think the plot plate work and the customization and stuff that he's done on this, is really cool. So yeah, like you guys are saying, I think working on that weathering a little bit more, and it's really, really high level. Yeah.
Yeah, Kira, I would say actually too to you, because I've been in that position, is because maybe you had a deadline here. Is just keep going. I think this is a piece you can actually keep working on as you see fit, and keep applying stuff to this one a little bit. You don't have to overwork it, but I think you could actually complete this model to a higher standard, because it's, to me, the value's there. The reward of this piece going to the next level of you continuing on with it past the show here, past this competition, is well within your providence to do so. And I fully embrace that as anybody out there listening. Don't feel that this is a cutoff point, that if you want to keep going, the Rex is another perfect one. Just keep going, guys. No sweat it. And Kira, you're like I said, I mean, you pursue this, brother, and this is going to be, you're going to be somebody to contend with for people that have to compete against you, because your creativity's there, the style's there, your vision's there. It's a badass Gundam. Yeah, I love this piece. I really did. I'm a huge fan of it. So yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Here is Klein, another Zaku. Actually, back to back here.
Back to back Zakus.
And both Master Grade 2.0s. So same base model. So you can see how different these are. Who should I go first? I'll just say that someone, I think in the last stream, made a comment about they didn't think that dioramas were allowed. And just again, to reiterate, just a simple vignette like this is totally fine as far as like the judging goes. It didn't really have too much of effect either way. So we can all kind of ignore that aspect of it. I think it does give a nice setting for the model, but ultimately, as far as the judging goes, it didn't really play much of any effect. And the one thing that is just kind of always painful to see is when you see the clear visor fogged over like that, I would assume from the top coat. So just something for you guys to always keep in mind. Any clear parts you have on your kits, always double check before you spray any top coat. You've got those either covered or removed ahead of time. But who's up? Mike, Aaron, who wants to
go? Is it Mike? Mike,
yeah, go for it.
Or me?
I'll go. It doesn't matter.
Mike, there you go.
I think the small photos are hurting you. The JPEGs themselves are physically too small to zoom in to really see something. So on that's probably just a technical issue on your side. Don't sweat it too much. This is a case where I think the modeler understands weathering, and he's past kind of the beginner elements and kind of moving up the food chain a little bit, where things are where they should be. And yes, it looks like a combat unit. It looks like it's been through some stuff, which is totally cool, because everything is actually quite well refined a little bit, even though it's a little heavy-handed and probably on a beginner level area of the spectrum. But I think you're kind of on the right trajectory. I like a lot of what you're doing in terms of the dirty shoulder and some of the battle damage parts in terms of combat and that kind of thing, like what you're trying to convey. I think is actually quite effective. It's in contrast to, say, the RX-78-2 that we saw, where it was, to me, I felt like that was too strong of this kind of thing. So yeah, I just think it's going to apply to a lot of the more beginner level guys. That just you're past that, and now you're kind of moving into where you really start to you're understanding story, you're understanding reasoning. Just keep pushing and practicing and refinement. I think you'll improve even more so in the future.
Yeah, I kind of had a similar take. I thought maybe a couple of years into weathering and stuff. Definitely not a beginner. One thing I'll say about that kind of background is, like, I'm not sure that was necessary, that little vignette that you've got it on. It might be a little bit distracting, but I don't think we held that against you. Yeah, in terms of specifically, think about, with a kit like this, you've got a good opportunity to kind of concentrate on areas that would be of high wear. Especially where the skirt would naturally be hanging on those thighs. You've got some really good opportunity to kind of show that there'd be wear there, versus other kind of areas that are probably going to be protected and not so damaged, and again, it speaks to having just general weathering over the entire model, versus, a bit more thought put into it. So, I think you could benefit from just thinking more about realistically, okay, given its environment, where would this kind of weather, where would the damage be? And then, like, you've got it in a dirty, dusty type environment, but we can't see that on the feet, so that's a dead giveaway that it's just a model placed in situ, as opposed to it all being kind of the one piece. It needs to be sort of sold in its environment. Yeah, and then all the normal feedback that we've been giving also applies.
I just want to quickly, if or anything else you wanted to say, Aaron, because I just want to give some last thoughts about this as well too.
No, you're okay.
Just about the customization of it, I think, like, with both of the panels missing off the top of the feet, it looks a bit weird. I think if you wanted to, and honestly, I think probably part of the reasoning was that, if I had to guess, was that he wanted to show off some of that nice detail, because on this kit it has a ton of really great detail underneath the hood. So he thought that maybe that could be like a kind of interesting point, that either those parts were damaged or removed or for whatever reason. But if it was one and not both, I think it'd be a bit more convincing as well too. But then thinking about it realistically, that'd be a pretty important piece of armor on there. So it's kind of difficult to imagine that even if it was damaged, that it wouldn't be replaced like pretty quick, because it would really need that to cover up these mechanical parts down here on the feet. But just as an idea for anyone who is thinking to do something similar like that, I think one way that you could do that, as far as like showing some of the inner detail, is having modifying it to look like the hatch is open, so you have to add some little bit of scratch building or something in there to make it look like that armor piece is raised up, like it's getting some maintenance or something like that. It's a good way to have the piece off, but not off entirely. It still kind of fits into like a realistic look of that, and you can show off some inner detail as well too. So just an idea for people in the future.
Yeah, the whole showing off inner detail thing, I know that's it's a hard thing to kind of not do, because there's so much cool inner detail in there, but you got to think about what the competition is, right? Like if it's a weathered type competition, then does that actually make sense in that world, that you would have that sort of stuff exposed, being quite vulnerable? And sometimes people go, oh, it's cool, it's gonna make it look better because I can show off all my cool little intricate painting. But does that actually serve the judging criteria? And if the answer is no, then don't do it just for the hell of it.
The same thing goes on the clean side as well too. Just people painting like 15 different metallic colors on the inner frame and stuff, just because all the details there. Going to town on that doesn't necessarily always make it look better. All right, let's talk about this. And I got your message, Aaron. Aaron needs to go pretty soon.
Okay.
And we've been going for quite a while. Unfortunately, we're still not going to make it through all the entries. So we'll maybe do one or two more, and then we'll have to wrap up for today, guys. Sorry to say, but yeah, we're doing our best.
We can probably get maybe one or two here, Aaron. What do you say?
Yeah. Well, let's whip through this one.
Sure.
I'll go first.
Sure.
So, yeah, I think if this model had been photographed better, it might have looked, it might have sort of sold it a bit better, because there's some, some of the, not in focus sort of shots, and it's hard to kind of get a sense of it. What like, that's a good example there. Like, what are we looking at here? Which part is this? You've got to try and work it out. Some sort of funny angle and stuff on it. So this is probably a good example where this might have looked a lot nicer in better photos. So just be conscious that your photos can make or break it when you're doing a photo-based competition. The other thing I'd say about this is that, like, I think there's a few missed opportunities with a kit. We've talked a lot about add some contrast, but if something is just totally pink like this, you can definitely make that work for you too. And then your contrast comes from your weathering and your different bits and pieces there. So I think you could have, maybe given us a little bit more. There's looks to be some sort of washes that you've put over it, but not a lot of kind of like picking out damage and chipping and the other kind of natural things that would occur for that. I'm not sure whether the CD base was needed.
Yeah.
Didn't really add much to it. There's no need to do that. You could have just popped it on that concrete there and taken a photo, and that would have been probably more effective. But yeah, I would probably say do a bit of YouTubing on taking photos of products. So there's not a lot on YouTube for like beginners about taking photos of models per se, but if there's heaps of stuff on there about taking photos of products, if you're like selling them online and stuff. And a lot of what they say in that from a phone camera actually applies to taking photos of models. If you don't have all the SLR and proper lighting and stuff, you can actually still get some pretty good effects. So yeah, what I would say to this guy is, think about doing some practice with taking photos, and I think you would get a bit of a different result.
You mentioned this before, Aaron, but the same thing applies to this one as well too. When you want to get those close-up photos, rather than having your camera really close, get back and then just zoom in is going to be a much better way to do those close-ups. Also, like for this photo as well too, like with the cars in the background, if you just took this photo just over there in the background, just like with the green, because actually because of the models in pink, having that green background actually kind of probably would have looked nice. Taking it over there so that the cars aren't in the background. It's just again a small thing. But.
And these days, like every camera phone, many pixel, you can definitely get away with taking a wider shot and cropping it in and still getting really great detail in it. So a lot of good tools out there. If you don't have like SLR and proper photo lighting and things like that, you can still get a good result.
Yeah, Mike.
I actually think this is Leah. I think it's Leia or Leah. I think it's a female model builder. So props to you, girl. I think this is early days for you in model building and all that kind of stuff. There's probably some comments just about in just kind of general. Pay attention to your seams when you're gluing them and the basics as we talk about building and construction. And you're fighting a little bit of just learning the basics and getting to that, and then. I would say to build on what Aaron's saying and stuff is just whatever we're saying, trust me, because I think you're pretty young and I think you're just coming into what this is all about. Just embrace all the comments and learn from them, move forward. A good thing, the strong thing here, the washes on the bolt details, you're actually doing a really nice job. There's a couple of the washes. I think you're actually doing them correctly. So that's good to see. They're in scale. The blackened areas around the bolts kind of give it just enough of a pop. That's actually quite effective. You're doing okay with that. I just think you're just kind of, you thought you'd have some fun with this and kind of throw this in and see what happens. So embrace the comments, work on the pictures a bit, work on just kind of the overall presentation. And like what we've said with a lot of the other young model builders here is just you're going to have to really practice this, and it's just no different to practicing anything else on planet Earth. It just embrace it, keep going, work on your basic construction techniques even more, and just keep learning and learning and learning. Trust me, you will get really good at this. The second place piece in this show is the same kit, I think, actually the same pink one. So look at that one, like use that one when it comes up later, and if we do another live stream. We talk about that one, and then you can compare just on your own personal time, because I think this is something you're just learning, Leah, and it's awesome to see. So just keep going for sure. I want to see more as you compete in the future too, because I think this is one to encourage, because there's a lot of good. There's different pink shades that are happening. You're on the bright path, so just keep going. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and again, just basic things. Of course, there's some seam lines that. Need to be worked on as well too, but aside from that, just painting in some more of the little details and stuff. So I'm gonna guess that maybe this was done by a spray can or something like that, and then some of the details are painted in, but then like painting like the inside of like this armor piece in there, or like the inside of these bits in there. So just some attention to detail on some of the, again, kind of before you get to the weathering, just some of the painting and stuff like that. Then once you get to the weathering, you've got all your kind of bases covered ahead of time before that. So just some simple things there. Do you want to do one more, Aaron, or do you got to go here pretty soon?
Yeah, no, we'll do one more. Just do one more and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
All
right.
Unless you guys want to stay on. I mean, I don't mind. If you want to stay on, stay on.
It's okay.
Up to Zach.
I am gonna stay on, but I'm gonna.
He's got to build his own
Yeah,
jalopy, his own
we're gonna
thingy over.
bring this live stream to a close, and then I'll be starting another live stream very shortly after to continue work on the Krakenvogel. But for now, we'll finish up here, taking a look at Lester's Gyaradoga.
Here. I want to walk around and just start yelling Krakenvogel down the hallway to my neighbors and just see what they do. Krakenvogel! I love it. Right. This one, right? You just see me now. Sorry, got a little sidetracked. Yeah, so this one, I think there's some hairspray going on here. So again, there's somebody here trying the reductive, subtractive stuff. I like this one initially. This is another one that I think my initial gut reaction was I liked it, mainly because of that factor. And I think unfortunately, as I looked at it further, and the judges kind of pointed out that this one probably gets knocked down a little bit because the techniques aren't as refined as maybe they probably could be to get a little bit higher placement. So, but I do like the kind of, there's some really tiny little chips and scratches in here. And then it does balance out to me some of the larger areas that I kind of wish you hadn't have done, but you've got a nice variety of stuff. And there's some stuff happening like where you're painting on the sword handle and the axe handle, where you're starting to get some discoloration stuff going on and you're starting to work through this. And I think this is kind of one of those things where I think you're well above a beginner stage and you're kind of going through the advanced stages of understanding all this stuff. And now it's going to be fine tuning yourself to really bring this home, because some of the worn paint on the chest and stuff is you probably fought that a little bit, even though you liked it. And I think the bullet marks on the shield and stuff, again, I think there's a nice randomness to your damage, which is, I've always felt damage is a risk reward conversation. Anytime a modeler damages a model, you to show combat, whatever. So this is props to you. You took on the challenge and you did a good job, solid job. The shield's believable. It's probably on the dark. I think Aaron's probably going to feel the same. This is in the dark color range of you missed opportunities for some contrast. The dark background's probably not doing you any favors. The base isn't doing you a ton of favors either. I probably would have just been straight up put this on a piece of wood and call it a day versus. You probably wasted time that you could have spent doing some other things. So it's a little bit of time management, maybe some skills, and you're in that where I think you want to go more. And I would encourage you to keep pushing this because you've got the basics down.
Yeah. Again, I think as a rule, doing something like a hairspray or a salt chipping technique on a model of this scale is pretty hard to get right. Like, myself personally, I don't usually use those techniques on Gunpla. It's not to say, but, if you're still trying to sort of develop and work on your style and you're still learning in the early stages of learning, then, maybe it's not a technique that I would recommend because it's quite hard to control. And unless you're kind of committing to it and coming back and putting other layers on top of it to tone it back a bit, it's always going to look a bit, a bit out of scale. And if you are leaving the model in its actual natural scale, then you do need to be thinking about that sort of stuff. Again, too, like I do like your randomness. So you definitely have kind of tried to keep it random, and that's good. That does actually help sell it. But yeah, maybe just a little dark. Like overall, like I think, it's kind of, your shadow is really shadow. Like it's shadow to the point where we can't see a thing in there. It's just complete pitch black. So from a judging perspective, we sort of look and go, wonder what's in there. And it just makes it a bit harder to sort of judge. So I would have maybe put it against a white background and lose the base, and it would kind of pop a lot more. Then you kind of have a little bit more to look at. But yeah, you definitely not a beginner. I can kind of tell you're not a complete beginner. So just again, keep chipping away at it. Keep working on your technique. You'll get it. And real world reference. I know I've said it like 50 times, but real world reference is your best friend. Because at least then, if you're looking at something that's real, that it's possible to be weathered like that. and you can kind of use that as your basis for how you might approach a similar type of machine, you know.
Yep. If there's one thing that I just want to add about the like physical damage to this, because again, it's one of the very few that like really has too much in the way of physical damage. I do agree with Mike that I like the randomness of it. And if I can find the photo of the shield here, you can see just like the placement of the bullet holes, I think is good. And you've got a little bit of damage here, like on the wrist and a little bit there on the knee. So I think the placement is nice. It's just in terms of like believability of the bullet holes, I mean, they're quite small. So, I mean, I'm not sure like in canon what kind of weapon would make those type of holes exactly, but maybe just work on just trying some different techniques about how to make the bullet holes. I'm not sure what he used, maybe just like a hot nail into there or something like that. Just kind of one of those basic techniques of that, but just try some different ways and then get some variation in there as well too, because they all look very uniform in just the actual shape of the damage. But like what's going on here around the wrist and then on the knee, I think does look pretty cool. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Obviously, not a beginner. They've got some skill there in terms of they've got the confidence to try that stuff and to do it.
Yeah.
But execution maybe let them down a little bit. So just a bit of practice, and you know, you'll definitely kind of sell it. You know.
Yeah. And I think the physical chips, like the physical kind of dents along the edge of the shield, to also look kind of very evenly placed, like along the edge there. So I think again could have done with maybe like about half of those, and then have them not quite so evenly spaced out. Looks like along this line there.
Yeah, still would be effective. This is probably a classic case, a little bit, if I had to guess. And not in a negative, but I think this is almost you bit off more than you could chew conversation a little bit. I think you're at the point where you really want to use this stuff and you really want to show all these different elements with the LED, the battle damage, the base. He's in a fight pose, the whole thing. Like there's a lot happening here in a condensed amount of time to get this done. I think this is one of those where honestly, you pull yourself back a little bit, and I think you're probably going to elevate the piece to a higher level because you've been able to put your energy into fine tuning more specifics. You're good at kind of everything, but nothing really stood out. And that's kind of a comment about where you really want us to see all these really cool things. And that's fine. It just, to be honest with you, your skill, you're probably bumping against your own skill level versus the time. So this is one of those, to me, feels like a little bit like you chunked off a big bite on this burger, and you need to just take a little bit smaller bites. And I think you get through. I think you would have been a little bit more successful. So I love everything. I liked it the first time. Like I said, I actually put this in my top 13 of, when I put it forward. So it was pretty high up for me right away, but it does come back down when we look at it from a distance and then come up close to me. Okay. So that's kind of where I feel on this one. Truth be told.
Yep. All right. If there's nothing else for that one, so yeah, we've still got a good amount to go through. So I mean,
I'm tired. I look tired, guys. I'm a worn out old man today. It's been a long Monday.
If we can, I mean, if these guys are willing to, I'm open to doing one more stream to go through these. We still have a good amount, so I think we'll probably try to get that set up for you guys and let you know, because we made it this far. We might as well get through all of them, right? So
yeah, I want to give I'm here. Yeah, exactly.
It wouldn't be fair on everyone. Let's get it done.
Yeah, we will.
So we'll let you guys know about that. As far as the clean entries go, we're scheduled for another live stream of clean entries on this Friday morning for me. If you guys are in the US, that's a Thursday evening for you. Once again, that's going to be over on Chris's channel. So I think I think he already posted about that. So check his Instagram for the exact time. I forget off the top of my head, but yes, Thursday evening in the US, Friday morning on this side of the world. Check that out. And till then, guys, we'll let you know what the next stream is going to be for us to finish up the weathering category. Thank you for your patience. If you're waiting to hear some feedback on yours and haven't got to it yet, I'm just going through them in alphabetical order. So
yeah, we'll get to. It looks like we're up to M. So we're getting one more L, and then we're in the M's, guys. So we're getting there. Yeah. Yeah,
So,
for sure.
thank you guys for hanging out. Those of you who are hanging out
Mhm.
today, thank you, Mike and Aaron, again for your guys' time.
Yeah.
Super
Absolutely.
appreciated. And
Good
nice
chat,
time,
guys.
guys.
Good chat. See you
See y'all
soon.
later.
See you guys.
See
All
you,
right.
bye.